pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Thanks for coming. I'm anticipating the audience filling up a little bit more tonight. We have a pretty packed agenda, and we're expected to go for a while tonight. Most things on the agenda are expected to take about 30 minutes with a few exceptions. We're going to start tonight with 3 scheduled appointments. First, a presentation on electricity for the town's buildings, a special hearing for a special permit on Russellville Road, and a shade tree hearing. That should take us about till 7:15. And then we're going to jump ahead to a presentation on the current state of net school spending and free cash. After each of these presentations, along with questions from the board, that should take us about 30 minutes. We're not likely to be entertaining too many questions from the public on these matters for a lot of different reasons, but one, the board is just hearing this information as a board for the first time tonight. I think it's an informational meeting in a lot of ways. If there are additional questions from anybody in the audience about these issues, which can cause lengthy discussions, please write them down. Please leave your contact information. Know that we will get back to you and have those questions answered. I'm hoping that the information that's given out tonight will answer most of the questions that are going around right now. With that being said, we're going to start.
As a point of order,
yes?
Did you mention when you think or anticipate when the open time for the public will be?
Not till the end of my agenda. I don't know what time, Nilda. I'm going to say probably around 9. This is a packed agenda. There's no getting around that. So, and I guess I should also mention, if there's something that's not addressed, then we'd love to hear about that at open time for the public. If it's been addressed already on the agenda, then please write it down for us. As always, I'll do my best to call on everybody, but, you know, there's a lot to get through tonight, so.
This is a part B to your comment about if someone has questions you would like them to put them in writing and you'll respond.
Yes.
Will that be done in a public forum, or will you correspond with that person individually?
I guess we would, I don't know.
Because if it gets brought up in a public meeting, it should be addressed in a public meeting.
Well, I would like to address all of those questions at a meeting so that we all have that information too. What I want to not get into is a 3-hour conversation about one topic.
I understand that. That's fine.
So, you know, I would like to hear whatever questions are brought forward from the public also, so that the board knows what people are asking.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to welcome Todd Bard, from the president of the Lee Energy Group, and he's here to speak to the board about putting our energy needs of the town-wide municipal services out to bid and locking in on a fixed rate for a period of time while electricity costs continue to rise. Mr. Bard, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. My company, the Energy Group, we've been in business about 9 years now. So we're an energy aggregator, so we go out for our clients to get the best pricing from all the different suppliers. So whoever wants to bid on your electricity supply will submit a bid to us, and then we'll aggregate all those bids together, sit down with Heather, go through each one, and typically we bring 4 or 5 best prices companies. So we look at which ones are the best, have best reputation, best service contracts, and then look to Heather to really tell us which terms she wants to use, whether it's a 12-month, 24-month, or 36-month. We'll advise. You know, our crystal ball is black. We don't know where energy prices are going, but we can advise on what we're seeing in the market. And, you know, we've got municipal clients. You know, we do a lot of work with solar net metering credits, which piggyback on electricity pricing. I talked a little bit to Heather about that. We can talk about that at another date.
Okay. So I just have, are there other people that do the same thing you do, or?
Yes.
And did you approach the town to work on this, or?
Yes, I reached out to Heather.
Okay.
And like I do a lot of other cities and towns that are clients of mine for solar, I then help them with electricity pricing also.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Bard?
You're going to give a presentation or is this?
This is really it, and then when you get pricing, if you guys want to meet or it's a subcommittee meeting, absolutely I can do a full board, because there's a lot of information and pricing is all over the map, so instead of trying to come in first and talk about pricing until I see the pricing, we have no idea where it goes.
Okay, now, there's a lot of vendors out there that do this.
Right.
Yep.
Bigger and smaller scales. I'm familiar working with CES. You know CES?
Yeah, competitive energy service out of Maine.
Right, exactly. I work with them a lot on there. Now, they tell us basically where I work, when to buy, when not to buy short, buy, and all that. That's basically what you do. You monitor the market and you come in and say, if you buy now at this price.
Right.
And so you predict based on a lot of professional benchmarks, I'm sure. Do you have any, I use the word warranty, if you will, when you give the advice? Is there any upside, downside?
Not really. I mean, even the experts, they can't warranty and guarantee anything.
Well, you are one of the experts. So
Right, so that's why I say
Yeah.
none of the experts, even the direct suppliers like Constellation, Direct Energy, JDF, Suez, they can't guarantee that if they say this is the best contract to go into, that 3 months from now, energy prices don't drop.
Yeah.
The National Grid and Western Mass Electric rates have gone up 30% and will go January 1st, the National Grid already went up. Nobody expected that. None of the experts even expected it. It came out of the blue. So that stuff can happen each and every day. So
I worked with Direct and Suez and CS. And it's a good system as long as we have somebody here that understands the information they're giving us. That's the real key to it. And there could be savings depending on how much they charge us. So but we need somebody on our end that is savvy enough to take advantage of it and bring it back and say, here's what we need to do. I don't know if we have somebody like that.
Just for a point of clarification, the energy savings we're talking about is for our municipal buildings, not our residential buildings, right?
Correct.
Okay.
that would be municipal aggregation, but it's different.
No, I just want to hear what he's going to say.
That's it. What he really needs from us tonight is a motion to move forward and have him present, his findings on costs from suppliers, I would assume.
And the question I have is probably, was Heather.
Just went to grab some papers.
Is there a dollar aggregate that throws this into a bidding process where we have to bid it?
Not that I know of, none of my municipal clients have, or net metering credits.
Because we are
only 30
restricted when it
goes
comes
up
to
30B.
signing a contract, how many years we can get involved with a contract.
This is a consultant, and there is something under 30B, and I'm not great on 30B. Heather would know on levels that we have to go out to a public bid. But
10,000.
is it for a consultant also?
I don't know, but I know it's
No,
10,000.
not for
The new, no, it
For
used to be
goods and
5,000, but
services, yeah.
10,000.
Professional services.
Yeah.
A question, so are you proposing that you're gonna come and give us a sampling of what you would propose for the town to see if we want to engage in a contract with you? Or are you saying that you want us to contract with you to go forward at this point?
So there's no contract with me, so I go out to all the different suppliers
Yeah.
and get pricing, and then bring that pricing back to you. And then you guys, whether it's Heather or the board, says, okay, we want to go into that 24-month contract.
Yeah.
And then pricing has to get refreshed that day, because pricing is only good for that day.
Yeah.
So I did 3 contracts today, and if they didn't get back to me by 4 o'clock, it goes till tomorrow. So hopefully pricing overnight doesn't spike, hopefully it drops, and if it drops, then they benefit. If it spikes, we have to reprice it, and whatever the price is, the price is.
So if we say we want to go ahead on this starting today, that's just how do you get your revenue out of it?
The supplier pays my consulting fee.
Okay, so are you gonna give us everybody out there, or are you linked in with certain suppliers because they pay a certain fee?
Nope, all of them the same. So, just like competitive energy,
Okay.
same exact.
Well, it's not like a stock advisor,
Yeah,
they're
no.
tied in with certain people. so-
No.
Okay, so it's no obligation,
Nope.
so
Correct.
it would be interesting to see. Now, do you have a client list that, I know
I
you
can
talked
get you
about
one,
a few, because that would be great if we can check some reference.
I actually heard about Todd from Stewart, Beckley, and Ware,
Yep.
who used to actually work over as the town planner in Easthampton.
Sampling, I know.
So he was highly recommended from Stewart.
Pathfinder Vocational is a client of mine. West Springfield and Agron and Long Meadow, I do all their solar projects, so they get the power off those systems.
Off the top of your head, do you have any sense of what percentages you save on average for cities, towns?
It depends a lot on your load usage. So if you're a good user of energy, you can save a lot more. If you're not, I'm working right now with Will Bundy at Eastworks in Easthampton. He's not a great energy user because he needs electricity and heat in the winter and then in the summer, and none in between.
Right.
And suppliers don't look favorable to energy users like that. Flat loads, they get better pricing, which means better savings.
Is there an escalation clause for fuel adjustment?
Most suppliers have it fixed, locked in, that they cannot come back, but that's a good point. You want to make sure that the suppliers that you choose have that locked in and guaranteed. Some won't, and then some have swing penalties. So you need to know about that. If you use more than what you have in the past, they will charge you an extra fee, or if you use less than. Because what they're doing is they're going out into the future, locking in those energy contracts. So.
I had a question for you, Heather. He's purely a consultant to us, basically, but when he goes out and gets these bids, is there a process that we have to follow that?
Nope, in this case, we're treated as, we are treated in the same manner as if you at your home decided you wanted to find out energy costs and go with a different supplier.
So we're not
you could do
required
the
with
same
30B to bid any of this?
No.
Okay. All right, I'm all set.
I have a question. Is there a certain time of the year that it's better to lock in a rate?
Good question. Yeah, usually what we call the shoulder months, so coming off the winter, so the spring, and then the fall. So you'll spike in the summer, and then you'll fall off the shoulder into the fall, and then you'll run into winter, which will spike again, and then coming off winter into like April, May, you'll start to fall off pricing. Those are the best times to look at energy, and that'll be one of the things that I will talk. The unfortunate part is Western Mass Electric, if you stay with them, their rates are going up in January.
Right.
So we're kind of in a pickle right now, unfortunately. But you can get short-term contracts. So you can get a 6-month contract that will get you into the summer, and then relook your pricing. And you can reprice anytime in between. So you can extend the contract. So you can get a 6-month contract, and then within a month of getting it, you can look to get contracts that expire at the end of 6 months and continue on for another year and a half. That doesn't stop you from getting additional contracts. So we call laddering them, sort of like CDs. You can ladder your CDs as they mature, same thing with energy contracts.
So the key is to stay familiar with the rates and jump on them as you see them, and that's what you would do
That's
for
what I
us.
do, yeah, each and every year. And I do that with solar too. Same thing.
I don't know if you can answer this, but I know Western Mass just got approved, what, 29% increase? Now, if you were all Western Mass, you would get, your bill would be broken up in for transportation of the electricity and the actual product. We're only bidding the actual product.
Yeah, supply, yeah.
How much of that 29% are you, do you know is going to be for the product and/or for maybe storm-related reimbursement to the Commonwealth, or the state, not the state, Western Mass Electric? Because that percentage is for both areas, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the rate increase actually goes to your supply part.
Okay,
So Western Mass Electric supply rates went up to 13.3.
okay.
So your distribution costs are separate. So
Are they
you-
part of that 29%?
No. So that's where, so it's really not 29%, it's a lot higher, but when they average it out, it came, like National Grid went up 30%, but it actually went up 100%. So the rates were 7.7 for supply, it went up to 15 cents for supply. So it was a huge increase.
Okay, so none of that increase has been allocated for distribution
Not that I've seen, no.
or related,
No, I don't know if it's
related to
been
the
approved yet.
distribution lines.
I know when Nico applied for the rate increase, I haven't seen if it's been actually approved.
I thought it was approved already.
I'll double check that, because I want to see.
I'm just curious on how much was dedicated to. There was a lot of talk that they didn't have enough money in there for storm-related damages and preventive work to the lines to make sure they didn't come down in the winter. There was a large debate on that.
Right, and if those costs are approved, they go to all your fixed costs, not your supply costs. So, because supply is a pass-through to the utility.
Yeah, I know.
You can't get any profit on that.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be under the illusion that we're going to save 29%.
Right. No, yeah, I wish I could.
I know.
Are there any other questions from the board? I would accept a motion to move forward with Mr. Bard and the Lee Energy Group to collect information and.
Second. You can't do that.
I'll make the motion if you want a second. Is that what you wanted, the motion?
Yes. Yeah, okay. And there's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming in. I hope your son wins.
Oh, me too.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Safely.
Yes.
Well, we can't, we have an appointment at 6:30, so it's not that time yet. For those of you with an agenda in front of you, including the board, we're gonna move forward. I'm going to try and check some stuff off the agenda that we can do in between. So I'm going to move to the appointments at section 5.1. So 5.11 and 5.12, probably on page 3 of your agenda, maybe? So we have an appointment to the Southampton Housing Authority Board of Ann Darcy.
Which would be me.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Thanks for taking it early, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Mr. Donahue, who was at the, last Housing Authority Board meeting on Saturday, is supposed to be here to recommend my reappointment. The
Okay.
minutes will show there was a vote.
Okay,
I guess I wasn't on the ballot. I didn't even know I had expired, to be
Gotcha.
honest with you.
okay. Do we need to wait for him to come, or can we? Okay. If there's no objections, I would accept a recommendation to appoint Ann Darcy to the Southampton Housing Authority Board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Question,
Sure.
is this procedurally okay, or do we have to see that the actual minutes?
I
We're
would say
okay?
that it's procedurally okay.
Okay, in that case, I'm good.
So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There's Bob right here, he can attest to.
We're all set.
Yes,
They
Good
just
to go.
brought it up.
Oh, great. That's what it
we can go home.
Thank you. So we're good. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for coming.
Sorry.
Oh,
Bob,
well,
just,
you're
just
not
for the
late.
record, your board already voted on this, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
And you, I'm assuming you approved her.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So did we.
Thank you.
Our second appointment is to the zoning board of Geraldine Swanson. They had submitted a letter to us. She had submitted a letter to us, and they had approved it and voted on it at their last meeting. I'm correct, right, Nelda? Your board, okay. So I would accept a motion to appoint Geraldine Swanson to the zoning board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Ooh, we're just gonna move right along here. Let's see. I would do open time for the public, but I'm assuming that there might be more people coming, so I'll wait. Let's see. What do you want me to go to next? PCFs?
If you wanna pass over a couple things, I can direct you and then we can get them off the list.
Ready?
So under the PCF for Bree,
Yeah.
we're actually gonna pass over that for now, because it's been continued, there's still more questions from the finance committee on that piece. If we
For the audience, we're at 6.11, we're passing over that.
Another thing we're gonna pass over is under 6.4.1, memorandum of agreement for intermunicipal water supply connections. We had discussions with the water department. Ed, I believe, was involved in this as well, but they've asked us to pass over until town council can review it. And we're gonna pay for town council out of indirect costs of the water department.
I talked to Tom Neal, he called me, he just wants to have the
The addenda.
commissioners meet and hear directly the pros and cons.
Okay.
Anything else you want to pass over?
There's more, but it's in different sections.
Can we have the warrants and payroll hold that while we're waiting?
Sure, they're right here. Are those licenses all signed?
These
Or
are all
If you wanna
signed.
pass them to me, I can read them out loud to you, and then the board can decide if they'd like to vote on them as a whole.
That's fine. Do you have time to do that?
I think
You have
so.
11 minutes. So we're gonna, here's the bills and payroll, so you guys can look at it. And we're gonna move down to 6.2 at the end of your agenda with all of the licenses and permits. And Heather's going to read them.
Have to sign this?
So this is liquor license renewal season, as well as renewal season for pretty much all of our licenses in our office. We have a variety of them. We didn't post them all there because some of them hadn't come in yet. We knew a few more would come in the next couple days than they have, and we wanted to make sure we approved as many as humanly possible at once, because we try to get these back to folks before January 1st. It's nice to have, plus the liquor licenses, we all have, but we wanted them all at once. As of right now, we have all liquor licenses but one that are ready to be approved. In order for the liquor license to be approved, all their paperwork has to be in, the fee has to be in, has to be no major objections from the treasurer's office as far as outstanding taxes or any other bills that are outstanding. And the other thing is a 304 inspection, which is a joint inspection between the building department and the fire department, has to be conducted. 304 inspection is required by law in order for the actual liquor license to be reissued. As of right now, I only have one that cannot be issued tonight, so hopefully it'll be ready to go for the 30th. It's signed, ready, so as soon as we have what we need, we can vote on it on the 30th and they can get it on time. But as of right now, it's the Tin Can Alley Lounge.
Is that a matter of us? Or
That's a matter of the 304 inspection is not being passed because work has not been done that needs to be done in order to do so.
Mhm.
And we will be sending them another letter to remind them of the timeline and what they need to do when. But they've already received one letter, so
Mhm.
gonna follow up on that. So the other ones we have is we have Camp John Association Incorporated. That is an all-alcohol club license. We have Southampton Country Club, Inc. That is a all-alcohol restaurant license. Pure Food Market, Inc. is a wine and malt package store. Maharaji, Inc., also doing business as Smitty's Package Store. They're an all-alcohol package store. We have Westlake Gourmet, which is Yaming, Inc. They are all-alcohol restaurants. Pizza 99 Co., Inc. They're all-alcohol restaurants. Then we have Constantine Encierros, Pasianos Restaurant and Pub. That is an all-alcohol restaurant. JJH, Inc., doing business as County Liquor Store. They're all-alcohol package store. Southampton Beer and Wine, which is Shrey Gurev Dev Corporation. They are all-alcohol package store. We have Galaxios Ltd. doing business as Opa Opa Steakhouse and Brewery. They're all alcohol general on premise. And then we have Black Birch Vineyard LLC. They are a wine and malt pouring permit.
So I
We
would,
want to do those separate.
what separate?
If you want to approve these,
Yes,
and then we'll approve
yes, I would like a motion to approve the annual liquor license renewals for,
Make a
All of
motion to
those
approve
minus.
the licenses that were read by Heather,
except the one that's missing.
except Tin Can Alley.
except Tin Can Alley.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to keep going with those? Or do you want to keep going?
All right, so I'm gonna just do a variety of licenses that are all kind of mixed in. The next set of licenses, there's common victualers licenses, which actually go right along with the retail food establishment licenses that are issued by the health department. There is entertainment licenses, there are farmer series, let's see, what else do we have? We've already covered that one. There's also entertainment license, car dealers licenses, and coin operated machinery licenses. So, let's see if we can get all these at one point here. And if I've
Do
already,
one group, because you're going to run out of time before 6:30.
how much time do I have?
5 minutes.
Oh, I can do these.
So people can
Easily.
understand you.
Easily. And I might read the, I'll read the liquor ones again. If it's a restaurant, typically what happens is the license actually includes the words common victualers license in the wording, so they pay for both the common victualers license and the alcohol portion of it. But you've approved the ABCC renewals, now this is the license signature piece. Okay, these are all 2015. So Big Y World Class Market, doing business as Big Y World Class Market, and that's a common victualer's license. I have Black Birch Vineyard LLC, Farmer Series Pouring Permit. Camp John Association Inc., Club, all alcohol club license. Camp John Association Inc., common victualer's license. County Liquor Store, which is a all alcohol retail packaged goods. Opa Opa Steakhouse and Brewery, all alcohol general on premise. Opa Opa Steakhouse and Brewery, common victualer's license. Passiano's Restaurant and Pub, all alcohol, common victualer's license. Pure Food Market, Inc., wine and malt beverages, retail packaged goods. Pure Food Market, Inc., common victualer's license. Pizza 99 Co., common victualer's license. 14 yeah, that's helpful. Sorry. Rite Aid, common victualer's license. Smitty's Package Store, retail, all alcohol retail packaged goods store. Southampton Beer and Wine, all alcohol retail packaged goods store. Southampton Country Club, common victualer's license. Subway, common victualer's license. The Tin Can Alley Lounge, that one we have put on the side for now. We have Westlake Gourmet, all alcohol common victualer's license. How am I doing? Can I keep going?
Mhm.
Now we,
Wait, are those, can we just approve that group of them?
do you want to approve one group at a time? Okay.
Keep going, hurry up.
All right, coin-operated devices. Pizza 99, 1 jukebox. Passiano's Restaurant, 1 jukebox. Passiano's Restaurant, 2 video games. Passiano's Restaurant, 2 pool tables. Opa Opa Steakhouse, 1 jukebox. Then we have Harley Davidson, the Class 1 car dealer's license. We have Dave's Auto Sale, Class 2 car dealer's license. We have Midtown Motors, Class 2 car dealer's license. Midtown Motors, Class 3 car dealer's license. Entertainment license for Harley Davidson, Black Birch Vineyard, Camp John, Pizza 99, Southampton Country Club, Opa Opa Steakhouse and Brewery, and to the Tin Can Alley Lounge. That one's fine to approve because it's not contingent on your.
So I would accept a motion to sign the annual license renewals of the common victual renewals, entertainment renewals, and car dealer license renewals.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that all of them? We're done? Wow, that's great. Positive. All right. I'm just waiting for it to turn to 6:30 to move on to the special permit hearing on Russellville Road. So, y'all get your Christmas shopping done? I'll take that as a no.
Did you want to do the payroll warrant and bill warrant?
I think they're still looking
Oh,
at
okay.
them. Mrs. Malonis, your house looks beautiful.
I think somebody had to get on the ladder, right?
Yes, still set up.
We're moving along anyway. I'm just waiting for it to be 6:30. I'm going to go by the clock on the wall that says 6:30. So we are here for the town's public hearing on December 16th for the special permit of Mr. Henry Kozak at 74 Russellville Road for the keeping of more than one unregistered vehicle not within an enclosed building. The purpose of this hearing is to hear from Mr. Kozak, abutters, and departments about the request for a special permit allowing 4 unregistered vehicles to be stored on Mr. Kozak's property. Thank you, everyone who came for this reason. The special permit applied for is governed by Southampton's bylaws, Article 10, the keeping of unregistered motor vehicles. Under the applicable bylaw, the Board of Selectmen has the authority to grant such a special permit if the Board of Selectmen finds that such keeping is 1, in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this bylaw, and 2, will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and 3, will not be a nuisance. On October 1st, the requests for comments were submitted to all relevant boards, committees, and commissions and departments with a due date of November 7th. A response was received from the Board of Health and will be read into the record. An ad was placed in the newspaper announcing the public hearing on November 26th, and all abutters were notified by mail. I will now read the original request for the special permit and the Board of Health comments into the record, and then we will open the hearing for comments. The original application is submitted from Mr. Henry Kozak of 74 Russellville Road. The reason for his special permit is his hobby to restore antique American cars. If the special permit is granted, he assures that the neighborhood will not be negatively affected as the cars and trucks are now. He states he will keep them hidden. He will make a concerted effort to improve how they look and or hide or conceal them altogether within reason. If a special permit is granted, he will get along quite well with all the neighbors that he has had the pleasure to meet, except for one, based on feedback that he's received and the condition of the property before he got it. The locals seem happy with how much it has improved. The place was a mess. He will make an effort to continue to make this place as nice as he can. Response from the Board of Health was dated October 9th and states, Dear Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health is writing this letter to you regarding the special permit for 74 Russellville Road. According to Section 2 of Article 10 of the zoning bylaws, keeping of the unregistered cars will not be a nuisance. The Board of Health is requesting that the special permit give the homeowner a specific timeline that proves work is being done on the cars. Upon arrival to the inspection conducted on August 7th, 2014, the health agent noticed the cars in the back and front yard. The cars in the backyard were almost fully covered in weeds and grass. The homeowner admitted that he had seen snakes recently, implying that there is a high rodent population due to the sitting of the cars. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 111, Section 122, the Board of Health believes these cars are a source of filth and could potentially cause sickness in town and will be a nuisance to the neighbors. The neighbors have complained before about the filth and the uncovered cars and trash. The Board of Health is requesting that these cars are covered properly, out of sight, and are monitored. If the homeowner does not make any reasonable progress towards restoration within 1 year, the Board of Health asks that these cars be removed. Is Mr. Kozak here, and are there any abutters? Oh, hi. Would,
Get a sign-in sheet for that.
would you all mind moving forward? There's a whole, you want to go to the front row? Yeah, come on up.
Oh, not that close. You can sit up front. Just kidding.
Is Mr. Kozak here? Hi, how are you doing? Good. Did everything I read on your behalf sound appropriate? Okay, so is there anything that you would like to say on your behalf?
Over the last couple of weeks, I have made an effort to, I rearranged the cars to line up. You cannot see them from, the perimeter or from above. They're covered well. I don't see any filth. I actually got rid of a lot of stuff, and I plan to continue.
So as far as you're concerned, you've made a concerted effort to clean up the cars and make it.
Yes, ma'am, but I will continue to do so even further.
Is there anything else you would like to state before I open it up to the abutters for comment?
No, thank you.
Folks, thanks for coming. I'll open the floor to you at this point. If there's anything you'd like to let us know, how you feel about the situation.
I'm actually the abutter to the left, looking at Sonny's house in the front.
Are you
You
the
just
one
state
that's
your
way in the
name.
back?
Yes, ma'am.
Your name and address, sir.
John Belicki,
Thank you.
and Belicki, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what date Sonny's been moved into the house. His nickname is Sonny, I guess, that's how I met him. There has been no movement on these cars. They've been covered. They've been in the same situation up until the point we had this discussion for the special permit. Now he's taking the initiative to move stuff around and cover it up with tarps. I want to know what the actual bylaw is in town and how it stipulates it, because at this particular point, I mean, I'm a car enthusiast and I can realize that certain cars can get restored, and this is above and beyond the average person to restore, where I see one or two of his cars he has some possibility and potential with, but as a last count, and I haven't been on his property without his permission, but I believe there was at least 5 cars. And some of them in a state of disrepair that are beyond the scope of a normal restoration. He's been a great neighbor, but to the point where, other neighbors are getting irritated just going along with myself.
So I'm looking at the pictures, it's hard to tell how many cars are actually out there. How many cars are we talking about?
There's 5.
There are 5 cars. Okay.
Just one.
Yeah. And these
Yes, sir.
are,
I'm Neil Howard. I live across the street from Sonny, and I'll second what John what he has mentioned. That Sonny's done a great job. He's been a good neighbor. He's got the house in good repair. However, I do tend to go along with the Board of Health again, and also with what John was saying about there's been no activity. Also don't see any potential for there to be any activity to repair any of these cars. There's no facility to do that other than the outdoors. He's done a good job in the last week of getting 2 or 3 in the front to the back. However, there's still one that is visible from the street, the rear end of it. And he may have plans to take care of that, but personally from across the street, that's my major concern. And like I say, if he did a good job cleaning it up, I'd like to see that continue.
I'm Doris Jamel. I live on 78 Russellville Road, and 2 days ago when I drove by, I took this picture. Today, one of the cars was put a little bit further back. My concern is also, we all have wells, and I would imagine that some of the debris that is around is not very good for my water. And I did talk to our neighbor before, about 2 years ago, and I told him that I was a little bit concerned with everything, and he did say to me that he was going to build a garage, and he was going to put stuff in. So far, there's something being built in the back, and I don't know if there's a garage or not. So maybe if you people can take a look at it, and you can make a determination what it's supposed to be.
and I would also, if there's something being built, is it need a permit?
Right.
So, that would be the other issue. Can I comment?
Yeah.
I went by it, and in the Ford and the 50 Ford and the Ford pickup were up front last time I saw them, and they're very restorable cars. I have some antique cars and all that. I once had a 65 Cutlass convertible. You can probably appreciate that. And I had a,
Used to be mine.
was that yours? Oh, okay. You restored it? Somebody restored it. And I had a parts car sitting behind my garage. And I gotta tell you, it got filled with rodents, it got filled with animals, and finally I just had to tow it away to get rid of it, because anything sitting there idle like that, and they were getting into my house. And the stuff back here, to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be restored anytime soon. If it's I watch a lot of the car shows, anything can be restored, but not in your garage type of restoration.
How can anybody restore anything on the outside?
Well, again, what I'm saying is I think this is beyond the normal person. The 2 cars out front didn't bother me. When I got a little bit of a view, and I didn't want to go into your yard, just an angle, but it seemed like it was, well beyond storage.
See that picture? I have mocked it on Sonny's property to see the picture now.
The bylaws, I forget which one of you asked, but the bylaw states in section 1 that the keeping of more than one unregistered motor vehicle assembled or disassembled, except a person licensed under general laws, chapter 140, section 59, on any premise, shall not be permitted unless said motor vehicles are stored within an enclosed building. Section 2 states that a special permit to keep more than one unregistered motor vehicle on any premise not within an enclosed building may be granted by the Board of Selectmen if it finds that such keeping is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw, will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and will not be a nuisance. Section 3 says all such permits granted shall limit the number of unregistered motor vehicles to be kept on the premise by the permit holder, shall not run with the land, and shall be limited to a reasonable length of time. Section 4 states that this article shall not apply to motor vehicles that are designed and used for farming. And Section 4 talks about the penalty for not being in compliance.
Is the permit for, I think I heard it's for 4?
Yes.
I mean, I'm aware of at least 5.
Well, that's what he just stated, that there's 5.
Could I talk, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Number one, to the young lady there, as far as anything leaking into the ground, I removed the engines and transmissions from the wall, so there's nothing can leak. I mean, I would be more concerned about some of the fertilizers used as far as contaminating any wells or drinking water. And what that gentleman said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't know your name, but as far as rodents getting into the vehicles, they seem to go after the upholstery and seating, the seats and things.
Yep.
I think we've all seen that.
Yep.
I removed that as to deter that. And the other thing, as far as rodents go, the yard is to the left, a big section of it is woods. I've been in woods and jungles all around the world, and you're gonna find rodents in woods and jungles. Copyright. I don't, I'd like to argue anybody that says otherwise.
Can I ask you a question to follow up? Where are the engines, transmissions, and upholstery now that you took out?
I stripped them down, moved off fluids.
So they're gone off the property, or they're sitting?
They're in the shed.
So the upholstery is in there too and all that?
Some of the upholstery I got rid of it, so
That's
I
it.
plan to probably get something a little bit better. Just to
Wherever it's stored, the animals. So it sounds like you have shells out there, shells of vehicles.
Yes, sir. And the other thing is, if you'd be kind enough to rent a permit of some sort. I do plan to continue to get rid of some of the cars. It's just when the winter coming, everything's mud, and it's either frozen or muddy. I've been moving things around for, I got done about 4 o'clock today, and I do plan to get rid of a little bit more, so by the, I mean, a 1-year period was allowed, it would be less cars by then anyway.
Yeah.
Can I address the board for 1 second?
Yes, sir.
One of the clear facts here is, I mean, Sonny's been there for X amount of time, and the cars have been there for X amount of time, and none of the neighbors have really made a verbal upset about it verbally, but the fact of the matter is, we keep our neighborhood up, everybody has some pride in it, and there are 5 junk cars on the property. Not all junk, but to the point of not being able to restore them all. I mean, I wouldn't have the means to do it, and I'm not sure how we can do 5 of them, so I think at this point, it's more of a parts/junk car. And I believe if there's a permit for 4, and he's already pushed it from 1 to 5, then if he has 4, where does it go from here? That's my concern.
Can I ask a question? And just kind of coming in between. The 2 Fords that you have a picture of, the truck and are those as bothersome to you as everything out back? Because I would think from your yard, you're getting a bird's eye view of what's out back.
We all do that.
They're visible through the fence except for the ones that are really in the weeds.
So if all those was cleaned up out back, would the 2 out front, the 2 on wheels bother you as much?
Well, there's 3 on wheels. There's a Ford pickup, and there's 2 Fords in the 49 to 51 vintage. They look like they may be restorable.
Do any of them run right now?
No,
Well, yeah.
Yes.
he doesn't have a motor in it. He just said there were no fluids or.
I think those are the ones in the back.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Kozak, how many of those cars run? Could you go turn them on right now?
They would take a little bit of work. The pickup,
How would you move them if they don't turn on?
it'll come along.
Hmm?
It'll come along.
Okay. So you can't just turn it on and drive it down the road right now?
There's no, in the front, there's only 1 pickup now. There's nothing, everything else is moved. You won't see any of it.
2 days ago.
As of this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can I make a point? This is a hearing for us to hear your complaints. The talking back and forth is not acceptable. Talk to us and we'll bring it back and forth.
I'd like to
Yes.
address the board one more time.
1 second, please. This nice lady on this. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to support my neighbors, Ian Darcy, 77 Russell Road. We take a lot of pride in our neighborhood. We put a lot of money into our house. I think these guys will attest to that. And everybody does. I mean, I just quite honestly didn't sign up to be next to a junkyard. And that's how I feel. And I feel really bad for those guys because they have to see it. Even I'm kind of diagonal. I don't know anything about cars. I don't care about cars. If the bylaw said you can have one unregistered, I feel like it should be enforced.
Mr. Kozak, how long have you been there?
Approximately 5 years.
25 years?
Approximately
5.
5 years, okay. And have those cars been there kind of ongoing for several years?
One of them, I got about a month ago, it's my daughter's car. She'll be driving it within a couple of weeks. I plan to get it registered next week. I just got the insurance papers stamped today.
It just seems the ones in the back have been sitting there a long time, overgrown, wood thrown around, 3 of them out there.
Yes, sir, the ones in well, like I said, about the last 7 days, I tried to organize it and get rid of a lot of the brush and the barns and.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the abutters or Mr. Kozak? I think procedurally, we need to close the hearing before we can have a discussion about it and make a decision. So if there's no other questions from the board or any other comments from our friends?
You believe, yeah, I'm sorry.
I think you ought to know, I have one more question. Sure. If our neighbor is trying to restore cars, is this going to be business?
I think he mentioned that it was a hobby in his application, not a business.
Thank you.
Did you have one?
Just gonna ask if you have sufficient information, if there's any questions you have.
Personally, I feel like I have sufficient information.
I can add one more thing. There was 6 cars there at one point, and I think he says he's gonna fix one up for his daughter, which I think is great. You know, it is cool. The point is, right now, there is cars beyond being able to be fixed by the average person. And I'm assuming that with a permit for 4, what's the next level he's gonna push us to? Nobody's complained for 5 years. We've been trying to be tolerant of it. Now, the permit is on the table. Realization is here. It's in front of these people to decide. I think it's gonna go another notch. That's why we're asking.
I think to add one thing, Neil Howard, I'm directly across the street from Sonny. He's done a decent job the last few days, and he got an okay fence to help the curb appeal. And at last count, I know that there's 3 of them, 3 of the vehicles that could be running vehicles, including the one that he's now stated that is for his daughter,
So does that make 6 on the property?
I believe.
There's 6 now with your daughter's car that's not registered yet?
No, sir, I believe that's the 5th one.
Because there's 3 in the back, it looks
Yeah.
like shells, and you've got the Ford truck and the 4951 Ford Vintage 4-door sedan.
Right.
And somebody said there was a second sedan like that?
2 in the 50s here,
Okay.
one 49 or 50,
Yeah,
the
then
other
the
50 more.
Ford truck, and it looks like there's 3
And 3 in the.
bodies in the back.
Oh, sir, not to interrupt you, the Act 51 is an enclosed building as per your law.
Right, but it's still there unregistered, it's enclosed. Yeah, okay.
Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
My wife just got the insurance papers stamped today. I
Okay.
just need to get the car's from Connecticut. I'm having a bit of a.
No, I understand that, I just want to make sure I had the count in my head. I understand you said you're gonna have it registered and running.
That will be ready
Soon.
within the next couple of days if the DMV cooperates.
Yeah.
Again, so that leaves it at 5 after that one's registered, not 6.
That's what I was just trying to, yeah.
Chief Silvernail, we're just having a conversation about Russellville Road and a special permit for cars. And before I close the hearing to discuss this, is there any concerns that you have over that address?
Well, I was aware that nothing's been brought to my attention as far as complaints or anything.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to the board for discussion and recommendations. I guess.
I have a recommendation to the board, or my feelings on this. It's in a residential area. He has 1 car he's gonna register, and the rest are hobbies, and there's 5 vehicles there, all told. My comment on that Either register the vehicles or remove them.
So would you recommend a time frame to have that happen?
90 days.
And technically, I've had antique cars for a long, long time, and my antique cars, I go through my insurance company, they cost about $140 a year, $150 a year to register them as an antique. So I don't think it's a huge burden to have somebody register a vehicle. It's not as if you're gonna pay $800-900 for it. It's a small amount to put an antique plate on it. Even if it's not, let me ask a question, even if it's not running, if it's registered, it's legitimate, right?
Yep.
Duly registered? Does it have to be inspected?
Let me ask a question, and I'm not a car enthusiastic, I'm not into antiques, but don't you have to have a running condition in order to register it?
Well, you gotta have it in running condition, have it inspected.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, and the chief may be able to tell, if it's registered but not inspected, chief, is that valid to have sitting on the side of your property?
Well, I guess let me answer your question this way. Several years ago, the registry had imposed a rule where they were going to revoke registrations on vehicles that did not get inspected within the 7-day requirement. They've since rescinded that. They don't enforce that. So it appears as though the position of the registry now is that you could in fact register a car. Obviously, the car's not running and you registered it, you wouldn't be able to get it inspected.
Right.
So it looks like they've rethought that, and that's not really being, enforced at this time. So, if that answers your question.
I think so, I think they went for the revenue stream. Yeah, I mean, I agree, I like antique cars, and, but I think these out in the back are just, what the neighbors say they are, they're just shells, that they're eyesores, so.
Jackie?
Well, I love vehicles, I like a nice car, so I can appreciate your, wanting to, keep them and preserve them in the future, but at the same time, I know I'd like to have, you do pay your taxes and you want your property to be clean, and, it's tough for everybody else, so, and it is a bylaw.
So I concur. I think that it's in a residential area. I think the bylaw is very clear about having one registered car on the property at a time. I think Ed's suggestion of having one registered vehicle and everything else removed within 90 days is a good recommendation. I would like to add, though, that,
I said either register them or
or
remove them.
remove them.
Right.
Right. And then after those 90 days, there'll be, we should implement the penalty of $10 per day per violation. After the
Per vehicle?
Per vehicle, after the 90 days. Is there any other discussion?
No, it's too bad it's in the winter, but
Well,
this has
you want
been
to
dragging.
extend, you
Want
want
to extend it?
Well, this has been dragging on. I mean, my thought is if you can get rid of the 3 vehicles out back within 90 days, and then maybe some more time for it. I think that the couple out front are registerable, if that's a word.
well, we're giving them an option.
Right,
Register
right.
them
Or
Or
remove them.
remove them.
Right.
Right, within 90
Yeah.
days.
I mean, I would be more, if you wanted to give him 6 months to carry it through to the early spring to get him out of here, I would be.
I guess I'm concerned with the neighbors because they've been doing this for a while now, and to be honest with you.
I agree, but
So I'm okay with 90 days, and he has the option of registering a couple, yeah.
So at the moment, the recommendation is register or remove the cars within 90 days. After such time, penalties will be assessed. I would accept a motion from the board.
I make a motion to that effect.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
One question,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure that you would have the answer for that. Can you register a car without a permit?
I don't know the answer to your question.
I don't
think
you
so.
Because technically, if you go.
It's gotta be roadworthy too.
You gotta have a title
Yeah,
or a bill of
second.
sale, or something that allow you to register.
Well, what I'm saying is, what if he just goes and registers all these cars?
I think technically he's got it. I mean, what Chief is saying, I mean, if that's allowed, then it's not up to us to.
It meets the intent of the bylaw. They have to be registered.
Well, he's saying you don't have, Chief said you don't have to have it inspected anymore necessarily.
Well, you have to have the vehicle inspected within 7 days of registering it, but, as I said, John, the registry several years ago had taken an action whereby they were going to revoke a registration that was not duly inspected. They're not pursuing that any longer.
So from a practical point of view, if you don't get it inspected, nobody's gonna come to your door and.
Right, and your registration's not gonna be revoked. It doesn't appear that they're doing that.
Yeah.
While they had that option at one time, that doesn't seem to be in place or at least being pursued by the registry at this time.
And it's probably not Mr. Kozak's really favor to go register junk vehicles out back, maybe the ones up front or something, but you don't wanna put too much of a burden on it, you know?
I mean, John, a lot of that it's all electronically tied in between the registry and insurance companies as well. So the registry enters everything in the computer, and the insurance companies have access to that.
So it's gonna be registered and insured.
Yes.
Right,
And
that's
so, that's right, and so if the insurance was canceled on it, then the registry would know about that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so likewise, the vehicle being registered, like I said, while it's required to have that inspection sticker or inspection performed, if it's not, I haven't heard of any being revoked.
But for somebody to register it, get a title, pay that, get the insurance, there's gotta be, you know, some reason and need behind it, so.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, yes, sir.
Just one comment, I mean, at the end of the day, if someone is a hobbyist and has a facility to put these in, the bylaw is perfectly clear. Vehicles can be stored within a building, and you'd be able to have as many as you could fit in that building. And that, you know, I feel for Sonny in his predicament, but, you know, gotta think about the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, this is not personal, it's
Absolutely not.
Well, I thank you all for coming in very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want.
They're out of here. Goodbye.
Next hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
90 days from when you get the letter
From
from
you get the
her.
letter from them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, so somebody needs to know.
Again, I'm gonna go with the clock on the back wall and not the clock on my iPad. So it's 7 o'clock and we have a shade tree hearing. I got the wrong paper.
Okay, take care, nice seeing you.
That's all right, baby. Oh,
No. Yeah, give me yours. We will now open the town's public hearing on December 16th for the shade tree hearing to determine if one 20-inch white spruce tree located at or about 147 Russellville, it's a place to be, huh? Russellville Road, due to a tree's poor health should be removed. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 3, this hearing was posted at Town Hall, Fairview Market, and the tree itself, along with in the newspaper on December 9th and December 16th. We will now hear from Southampton's tree warden, David Garska, on this matter. Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
very good.
Ready?
I just decided to have a hearing on a tree because it's, the family there is getting rid of spruces on the property, and this one just happens to be over the line. It's right near their driveway. It's fully mature, and, if half of it was dead, we wouldn't have to have a hearing on it, but it's still fully alive. It's just that it's, getting to the stage where the needles aren't real bright green, they're in the yellowing stage. You know, the tree might live another 10 years or so, but it's on its way out. And the roots are getting towards their driveway, problem for them. The tree probably shades the road in the wintertime in the morning, around that corner. It's kind of a sharp corner getting around to the bridge. And so the family would like to take that tree down, which they will pay for, removal of that tree. I have no problem taking the tree down. They're willing to plant something, you know, to replace it. I'm not sure what kind of tree they plant, but I told them we don't necessarily have to plant it on town property there, because that's a bend in the road, and I'd rather keep the tree back a little bit further. And they would take care of the removal. I mean, I can coordinate the removal. It'd have to be a professional tree crew that's got license. I don't necessarily have to take it down myself. If the town took it down, then they pay us as the town to remove it. The town wouldn't be out any money to take care of it since it's a live tree.
So the family wants it down.
Yes.
Does it cause any public hazard on the road at
Well,
all?
like I say, it's, you know, the branches reach out over the road, you know, spruces, they can stretch out quite a ways. You're not hitting trucks or anything that I can see, but like I say, in wintertime, I'm sure that shades that section right there, and it probably gets a little bit icy, so you could say that's a danger that the tree's posing to. But, I mean, the life of the tree is, it's near its end.
But as far as you're concerned, it's not a big problem for you to,
No.
and, I haven't been out there lately, but you're saying that come winter, it's gonna create a situation in the curve.
As you can see, it's in the, I would say in the morning hours, that's shading that part of the road. And so, when you come around that bend, it starts to be quite a sharp bend into the ridge, and I'm sure that stays icy there. So I'd rather see the tree out of there.
Am I right to assume that if there's nobody here in support of keeping it, that everyone is okay with removing it?
As long as the board, I mean, basically, I make my case for the tree. It's not, it's actually your vote, whether you.
That's what you need from us, whether
Right.
you need us to decide whether we're gonna keep it or get rid of it.
Yeah, and my feeling is, I have no problem with getting rid of that tree.
Okay.
David, this has been posted at the proper time and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and posted on the tree and publicly in the newspaper also.
John?
Now, who is the family of the trees? I'm always concerned about an issue of, you know, ethics and, or conflict of interest or something, so,
I don't know the name
who,
of
do you know the family there?
Off the top of my head, you're asking me to call it. I didn't take the name with me, but
Heather, do you know the name of the family associated with this tree?
Is it
We're
in the
not talking
packet of
about-
information you have there?
Let's see it.
No.
you just said, yeah, it's 147. You know, it's the old,
The address.
it's the house that's been remodeled here right on the corner, right in front of, White Inn and,
Oh, right there.
The,
right there.
the little one in the corner?
No, like right,
Yeah, it's a little blue one, they painted
Yeah.
it blue,
Okay.
and that tree is right on the edge. We've got it
I know who it
right
is. I know
That
exactly
is,
who it
that
is.
is, you know,
Yep, I
Kind
know
of
it.
a tough spot right
Yeah,
there.
because it's right in the crotch when you look at it this
that's,
way.
Correct. Nice couple, they did a nice job.
they
The
just
house
sold
looks
the house.
beautiful.
It was,
just sold
I'm
it?
trying to think whose house it was before that.
Did you say it was just sold then?
Yes.
Yeah, they moved there within the year.
Oh, so it's somebody else then. I knew who used to live there. But there's no conflict that you can see with the board or anything. Okay,
So they knew it was down.
okay.
Nice, very nice couple. They're willing to plant something in that
Yeah.
area.
Okay.
if there's no objections from the board, I would accept a motion to remove the tree at 147 Russellville Road.
So moved.
Second, and just to reiterate, it's going to be, the town's gonna pay for it and they're gonna reimburse us, or they're gonna pay directly to the contractor?
I'm gonna probably just have them pay directly to the
Yeah,
contractor.
that would be my,
Would be better.
so with that in mind, I would, I'm fine.
Just make sure they have liability insurance.
They just asked me to coordinate whoever it's gonna be, it might be one of the local trees.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to go.
Thanks, Dave.
That is the end of the appointments at this point. We're gonna move on to net school spending. But I'm gonna let everyone get situated for 1 second and take a 5-minute break, and I'll be right back.
And then I think we're gonna start with free cash
Oh, we're gonna
first,
start
if
with
we
free
could.
cash. Okay, but we have 5 minutes, so.
That's good, because IT.
6 minutes, 7:10, we will come back into session. I did? No, I didn't. He's at the end. Yeah. We had 3. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, he did.
Where? But not at a time. So but not at a specific time. So we are going through the specific time ones, skipping to net school spending and free cash, and then coming back down.
Mark, do you have an appointment?
Have that, what am I not doing right?
For those of you who weren't here at 6 o'clock, thank you for coming. And I will just reiterate what I said at the beginning. If there are questions that you have that are not answered in the following discussions, please write them down. Please submit them to us. We are happy to answer them for you. But these two conversations coming up could get rather lengthy, and so I would prefer to not keep that conversation going if it wasn't needed. With that being said, we're going to start with the free cash certification, and Vicki Morrow, our town accountant.
Probably me. We're here today to talk a little bit about how free cash works, what happens with it, what the town plans to do with it in the future, and Heather put together this little PowerPoint here so that you could have some visuals instead of me just yapping away. Basically, I'm going to scoot over here because I don't want to cover my back to everybody.
Just watch the words.
Oh,
Liability.
Not really. So basically, to get pretty simple, free cash is the money that's left over from the estimated dollars estimated for the revenues versus what we've collected and any unspent budgetary funds that were appropriated during the year. And various other factors that play into that would be any encumbered funds for certain items where people would spend at the end of the year. They would send me invoices. The school would send me their purchase orders that they still have to fulfill. Those types of things kind of float in and out of that number. But basically, general rule of thumb is whatever we underspent in our budget, appropriated, and then whatever we underestimated versus our revenues. This slide here kind of gives you some examples of, I think people can pretty much do the basic math. You appropriated $10 for expenses, but you only, no, that's backwards. If you appropriated $10, but you only spent $7, then you have $3, left over that would fall into that free cash number. The same thing with revenues. You end up estimating $50,000 for a specific department, and you end up collecting $55,000. That $5,000 would flow into free cash. So if you want to skip there. So basically, the DOR uses the balance sheet that I submit to them as of June 30th. I have probably approximately 10 to 12 different balance sheets, cross-referencing all of the fund balances that are on our books that I need to send to them, and they cross-reference all of those balances. They split it out in different types of scenarios, one from expenses, one from revenues, and they make sure that ties back to the balance sheet and the taxes. It ties to the cash that the treasurer's collected, what they still have in the bank. All those different types of worksheets, they take and verify all that and make sure everything looks legitimate and they're all in the right spots, so to speak. And then basically the other piece is, until it's certified, which could be any point during the early fall, we can't spend from that. And anything that's left over from the year before gets rolled over into the new number when it gets certified that next year. DOR recommends that we have sound financial policies with our free cash. As everyone has heard us speak of this previously, we've been using free cash to balance our budget, which is not good business practice. It kind of got us into the spot where we are today, where the budget for FY15 was pretty drastically, it seemed like it was pretty drastically cut. Because over the past, 10, 12 years, we've been using pretty much most of the free cash that we've had for those particular types of items. And we definitely don't want to use it. That's not a good recommendation from the Department of Revenue, the Department of Local Services, to use that to balance the budget, because then you're just kind of fooling yourself that you really have all this money, and then the next year, you don't have the free cash to supplement the budget, And so you're gonna end up with a bigger cut in your budget than you would anticipated to begin with. You know, again, what we just mentioned was free cash is not a reoccurring revenue source, and it really shouldn't be used to, you know, fund the regular budget. It should be for one-time, sort of emergency type of purchases that the town may need, or to be put into our stabilization funds, you know, for a rainy day, if we need to buy plow trucks, police cruisers, fire trucks, you know, we need to get wells fixed, we need to get the pumps fixed, that's type of thing, you know. If the roof leaks and we don't have insurance here, we would need to get that type of thing fixed. Basically, the DOR has a calculation in how they come up with that free cash number. There is a UMIS account, which is called undesignated fund balance, which is over the years it accumulates money. It's not really physical money. It's not actual, we don't get that money and put it in that account. It's pretty much just journal entry accounts. Any money that, it's the account that holds all the overages and underages of the overages and underages, that's not even a word, my husband would kill me if he heard me say that, of anything that, you know, that kind of went through the budget. They take that beginning balance, any encumbrances will come out of there, any positives that we've over collected for revenues would go in there, anything we wouldn't spend on the budget would go in there. So there's various things that flow in and out of that account, and they verify that through all those spreadsheets that I send them to make sure that balance makes sense to them. And then what they do is they would subtract any receivables still left for taxes that we would need to collect. Only supplemental taxes and real estate taxes and personal property taxes are included in there. Motor vehicle taxes are not included in that. It would just be from whatever we've collected from the tax rolls. And then the deferred revenue is any revenue that we would anticipate collecting that would offset those taxes that we would need to collect. Now, the difference between those two would be whatever the overlay is that was set aside by the assessors. That's a special account set up when we do the tax rate. Those are for abatements. For whatever reason, people may need abatements, and there's money always left in there based on whatever their calculation is of how much they think people are going to need to be abated. And that's why there's a difference between that two. And then the other piece that comes out of anything that comes out of this calculation would be any items that are on our books that are in a deficit spend. For instance, if we happen to have any accounts in our general fund budget that was a deficit spend and we overspent the budget completely, would be deducted right off the top from this. Anything that's in a special revenue fund that's in a deficit balance gets deducted. Anything in the revolving accounts that are a deficit gets deducted. Anything in a capital fund gets deducted. So anything on our books that's negative for whatever reason, you know, for instance, like school lunches is negative and police detail is negative because of the timing of the receipts that are coming in, that gets deducted off the top. And I would say that speaking with the DOR, those two funds are on almost every single person's free cash calculation because of the timing of how the distribution of those revenues come in. And so then they end up with the free cash number from there, and that's what they'll certify, and they'll send me this spreadsheet pretty similar to that, and you know, I'll get an email that says this has been certified. Now at the same time, they'll also certify any retained earnings / free cash from any of the enterprise funds, and those are also certified at the same time. There are separate separate documentation, same type of balance sheets that I send them for those particular items, and they do certify those at the same time.
Or not.
Next one. Basically, I go through this, and then the DOR goes through this to make sure that that first page where they come up with that free cash number is in a particular range. So they would take prior year's free cash that they certified, this year's free cash that they would certify, come up with an average, And then they would plus and minus any items that we recorded as being underspent, over, revenues that were over, anything that was over or under, plus and minus any of the property taxes, that type of thing, and any, again, any of the deductions that they took for any deficits that were on our balance sheet, just to kind of get an idea of, is this in the range? If we take all the pieces from all those different spreadsheets that I create and put it into this one worksheet, does it come up close to what they think is going to be certified? And there's a whole formula that they have, and if it comes close, then you know you're good. And I go through this same exercise and that same spreadsheet they give me, just to make sure that I'm kind of in the ballpark of what I've submitted to them. Those are they take free cash from last year, this year, they take 85%, 115% to make sure that, you're within the range of all those items that are, plus and minus out of all those different accounts. Go ahead. I guess maybe the next slide might be better. Do we not have that one here? I guess basically if you can see, if you want to go back maybe, I don't know. This gives you a trend of where our free cash has been for the past 10 years. Back in 2012, we had $647,000 that we got certified. Last year we have $560,880 that was certified. So this year's certification has been pretty in line. There were some earlier years that were much smaller, but have pretty much been in line with where we've been. It's not unusual for our community to have $500,000 in free cash. There are some communities out there that are our same size that have $1.2 million. I mean, I know, like, for instance, if you read in the paper recently, I know Chicopee's a huge city, but they had $7.9 million certified in free cash, which is a boatload of money. So it's not uncommon, and it's not anything that somebody says, oh, I'm gonna underestimate our revenue so that we get free cash. You try to base your revenues on a 3-year average to put into your tax rate, and that was recommended by the Department of Revenue. We go through and we talk to some of the departments and say, what do you think that you might be getting for revenues this year? Some of it's unexpected and some of it is not anticipated. Last year we had a big, huge boom because they changed the code for the building department. So everyone came and bought and got their permits at the end of the year, which took our revenues out of the water. Which at the beginning of last year, when we were doing this in, whatever we were doing, March, May, or in 2014 when it was May, I guess we didn't anticipate that happening. That didn't come up in that conversation. So, that's an extra $35,000 you weren't anticipating. Those are types of things that they're hard to gauge, and I know we probably need to do a better job of that going forward, but, base it on what the DOR recommendation is trying to gauge a 3-year average. Highway department was tough. 1 year there was $17,000, but they really collected 20. Then the next year they budgeted 20, but they only collected 17 because of the cutting of the curbs and all that. So some of it's tough to gauge, and I guess you'd rather be a little bit conservative than overzealous, because then you'll get stuck if you earn less than, if you earn less than what you really anticipated. So
this is just the percentage versus the budget and the amount. I wouldn't look at the graph so much because it apparently is lying to you.
The numbers are pretty. So basically, the DOR, yes, Nilda.
I'm saving you.
Okay.
Can you go back to a chart that had, that one? I would ask, why did we have an unused free cash from FY13?
With that particular amount, we had the $560,000, $880,000 from free cash. We used $371,000 to balance the budget, and we didn't use anything else out of it. We left it. We didn't want to touch it.
Okay, so why was it then when we were presenting the FY15 budget,
Mm-hmm.
John Martin's presentation said we thought we would get $102,000 of free cash. Then from 102, we went to 0. And the word, both at department head meetings by Heather, was, there's no free cash, we don't have any money. And now we have 533.
At that point in time, we still had the $102,000 that we could use for, I guess they'd have to be presented to the board and decided on what they would use that 102 for, but you could only use that up through June 30th. And I don't believe that we wanted to use that to balance the budget at that point in time. Now, at that point in time, we weren't going to know if we were going to have, what type of free cash we were going to have.
Until it was certified?
Correct.
Okay. But you have to have some idea.
At that point, I had no idea.
All these surprises.
I had no idea. Because I don't have, the books aren't closed. I had all those revenues. Remember when we sat here and were looking at the building revenues?
Right.
Right? We got that money at the very last minute.
But if you close your months every month.
I don't close every month.
So you and Donna don't get together and know you have to have some gauge as to whether you're up or you're down.
Can I just interrupt here for a minute? I don't want to get, I appreciate your conversation and the questions that are being asked, but I don't want to get off track of where we're going. I don't think that we're being blindsided here by $500,000. I'm looking at a trend, and with the exception of 2 years, maybe 3 that are less than $4,000 or $5,000, we're right on target for where we usually are each year. So if at some point during the year a comment was made that said, we don't have any free cash, I'm going to go ahead and say that probably that happened out of, a frustration that we're making budget cuts, out of a frustration that we don't have any money to balance the budget at that moment. But I'm looking at this number and I don't think that $511,000 is a bad number. I'm grateful that there's $500,000. Do I think we were out of line asking for $1 million override? I don't think so. I think that every year you get this free cash number, and what we need to do differently as a town is figure out how to spend that money, how to invest that money, where to use that money. Not focus on who made a mistake or where the mistake came from or who spoke wrongly. These numbers are right in line for the last 10 years of where they have been. So
because you're deflecting. You're deflecting. You went to the town to ask for $1 million.
Well, I appreciate your comment. I appreciate your comment very much, but these numbers are not any different really than they have been over the past 10 years. So I don't feel like I'm deflecting. I think that people are doing the best job that they can, and now we have $500,000 to work with going forward. Sure.
And I think one of the other things, you're taking this wrong. You're taking the $102,000 cash, or free cash from fiscal 13 and you're projecting it into 15. We had that year in between where we had to use it. But also, like Vicki is saying, we're very conservative on estimating the revenues and all that. We could be way over the top and we get caught with our pants out. So this is being conservative. We got this money in there. And if we're going into the revenues being conservative, we got to be conservative when we do the budgets. If you want us to project over, then go back to and say we're over by $500,000, that's the wrong way to go. So, you can shake your head, you can disagree, that's fine, but when you're doing your home budget, you don't spend more than you think you're coming in. You want to be conservative. And if I overspend my budget because I'm projecting more money than I'm going to make, that hurts me. It doesn't hurt the whole town. We don't want to hire people and lay them off. It just doesn't make sense. We have to be fiscally conservative, I guess is what I want to say. So it's easy after the fact to say, gee, we had more money. I'm like, Liz, great, we got more money. Let's see what we can do with it.
So, go ahead.
And this money that we got from free cash wasn't going to help us with the 15 budget because it wasn't going to be certified in time. And the two are kind of unrelated in a way, because we don't want to get caught using this money to balance the budget again. Now, Donna and I balance all of our cash every month, bank reconciliations. I balance with all the receivables for the taxes. So in that sense, we balance to make sure that my books match her books. But I don't necessarily go through the computation of what do I think free cash is going to be, because there are unknown variables of accrued payrolls, accrued bills, you know, things like that come up that play into this whole big number.
This free cash, $500,000 that we have, the board voted to put certain amounts in the capital stabilization and certain amounts into the operational in other areas. We're gonna put a big chunk into the capital stabilization. Now, I'm gonna pick on Chief Silvernail. He hasn't gotten anything for the police department in years, the cruisers, et cetera, et cetera. So once we put $200,000, $300,000 into the capital stabilization fund, he's gonna come and say, I need 3 cruisers, that's $100,000. Fire chief's gonna say, I haven't gotten this, that's $100,000. Highway department, we haven't been getting equipment for these departments in a long time. So we're gonna fill up the stabilization account, but the capital one is just gonna come back down again. So we have to have a plan to keep filling it, so we can get a new cruiser when it's needed, a new fire truck, a new pickup truck. You know, it's not free cash, that's an oxymoron. We're funding the needs of the departments on the capital side and the operational side.
But no, like, you know, I can go through and try and do, you know, try and be more proactive in trying to, you know, ahead of time, try to figure out what it might be. You know what I mean? Like, I can work on that. That would be something I could work on for, you know, people, if that would be.
I think the key is we don't want to come out with zero. We don't want to gauge
I don't think you
exactly,
want to come out with
because
zero.
we're not going to be able to fund the department's capital needs and other needs.
Exactly, exactly.
We've got to think of that ahead.
But there's always room for improvement on my part on trying to, you know, gauge it a little bit better earlier than not. So,
Vicki, I just
Yes.
want to make a comment. During the budgetary process for this current year, we questioned a lot of these numbers. And we've had meetings in Heather's office, I was involved with several of them, where we bring the assessors in and challenge them on new growth. And she would say, well, these are comfortable numbers for me. And then we would bring the building inspector and say, what do we have for new permits coming to verify this is a solid number, okay? And then both of them agreed that, you know, the number that they gave us was a comfortable number that they wanted. Probably it wasn't, but they recommended to us, Nelda, and whoever else is concerned, these numbers to carry forward. And we verified them the best we could with what we had at the time. But I'm willing to bet you that excessive local receipts shows that there was a lot more new growth involved there than what we currently carried on the books. But you don't want to, just to say what John Martin says, that you don't want to carry something that you can't meet or you guess wrong. I was, in my early years working for the town, I remember we were short by $300,000. We had a cut in January, $300,000, which was the equivalent of $600,000, because you only had 6 months to make that up. So there was some thought, and it wasn't just willy-nilly. We verified a lot of the numbers that came in from various departments with their numbers. And, yeah, maybe they were conservative, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
there's always room for improvement to better gauge, do more analysis, and see what we come up with.
So that being said, at this moment, we have $511,000 in free cash. The question is, what do we do with it, and how does that, is this where we're gonna lead into net school spending at this point?
If we can come back to what do we do with it after we get through net school
So at this point, at our last meeting, the Board of Selectmen had approved a process on what to do with our free cash going forward, with that we would like to bring to town meeting to make a bylaw. For those of you who are not aware, we had broken it down into the 4 counts: capital stabilization, operating stabilization, the OPEB, which is other post-employee benefits, and one-time expenses. We decided that we would put 35% of the free cash each year into the capital stabilization account, 30% of it into the operating stabilization account, 10% of it into the OPEB account, and 25% into the one-time expenses account. Personally, I think if we're gonna vote on it last week, then that's what we should try and do going forward with the free cash this year. It doesn't make any sense to me to vote on it and then not follow that process. I don't know what the thoughts of the board are.
think capital stabilization is probably not enough, because we have all these, needs that I was just talking about that we need to catch up on, but, we're gonna do what we can. The one-time expenses roll over. Personally, I would put more of it in capital, but, you gotta start somewhere.
No, I always believed, when our accountants told us that, and mainly this came from DOR, is that we should be carrying 4 or 5% of our operation budget in reserve funds to cover unforeseen events. And is that basically where we are?
Which reserve fund are you talking about? You're talking about the reserve fund for the finance?
Stabilization funds.
Oh, stabilization.
Yeah, for operating type items.
And that 511,000 is like 3.5% of our total budget.
Yes,
so
which is, we're kind of right on, yes.
But this is a great step forward that we haven't been able to do in the past, and I think we need to do it.
Good beginning.
You could start this way, and then eventually, if you feel that there's too much in the operating, because you're gonna have a capital improvement committee, and you're gonna need to replace those cruisers, you're gonna need to replace those fire trucks, you're gonna need to replace those plow trucks. Those are big ticket items that, if 2 of them break down in 1 year, do you wanna be able to fund 2, or do you wanna say, hey, I gotta pick and choose which one, because there's not enough money in that capital? So that might be something down the road. You have enough in the operating for that particular time, and you override and put the money back into the capital. Because like you said, those are the infrastructure of the town, and you want to make sure those are kind of caught up to speed.
We'll catch up. There's a question.
There is.
I just had a question about those percentages. Were those a recommendation from the DOR or somewhere else, or?
I think that those percentages came through conversations you had.
Conversations, and Heather and I kind of modified some of those conversations, and speaking to, looking through other towns and what they do, and what the needs of our town is. As John has mentioned earlier, our capital, really, we need to kind of replenish that. People need those capital items to be, you're going to keep throwing money away if you're not going to fix the buildings, or if you're gonna keep fixing the police cars and the plow trucks and all that. You wanna be able to buy them new and hope that, that would be it for a little while, so.
So it wasn't some kind of recommended percentage?
They did, they kinda gave us some guidelines, and we kinda talked it over to decide what do we think is the best for our town going forward.
So they did give you some guidelines?
They did give us some guidelines, yeah, we didn't just say, hey, let's do this, but, we felt these were the categories where it would best serve, what we needed. So, Tammy. Oh, sorry. I just. Bonus. Well, she's looking at me.
College Highway. Did I just understand that you're gonna make this a new bylaw
We are going to bring it to town meeting in January.
in January? So that in January, everybody would be voting on approving this, and then every year we would be meeting, and not necessarily meeting, but we would be putting money into free cash in those particular going forward.
Yes.
So we would always have money.
And we would always have a plan.
Okay.
That's pretty much the only way we're gonna do it, is mandate it and put it in.
Heather?
So just one thing to add too, on the operating stabilization, one of the benefits of having that account, actually having money in the account, is in the event we need a large project, say $160,000 worth of gasoline tanks over at the highway garage, and we had the money in operating stabilization, we could go to operating stabilization in town meeting to ask for approval to spend the money on that, as opposed to going to the town and saying we need to do a debt exclusion for this project and take out loans and take out, having to incur the interest and everything else, but actually being able to finance whatever disaster or whatever emergency has come up upon the town without having to go to a debt exclusion every time. The other piece was on the OPEB. On the OPEB, we started saying, we talked to Vicki, myself, and Donna sat down for a long time on the OPEB piece, because it's something that's starting to come up. The state, as of right now, does not have any requirements to fund the OPEB. However, they're working on it. At some point, we're gonna get stuck. And we're trying to take a proactive piece. Now, the good news for us, as opposed to many other communities, is we probably don't have as huge of a liability as many of the other ones do. So maybe, starting to put 10%, if it's 50,000 each year, 10 years, we might be good. So when we go to write this into a bylaw to propose to the town meeting, we're going to probably want to modify the OPEB line so it says, to fund the OPEB as long as there is a liability. So after 10 years, maybe there isn't a liability for a year, so that money maybe flows into the one-time expenses for that year. But maybe the next year, all of a sudden, we have to adjust our liability because it goes up a little bit. So we have the money, we can put in what we need. But we want to make sure that as we're creating bylaws going forward, that they're bylaws that kind of last over time and not something that have to be amended over and over again because they're outdated.
So, one more follow-up question. So once that money is voted into those, bylaw passes, and once the money is allocated into those particular things, would it take a vote to
9/10?
move it elsewhere?
Yes.
9/10 vote.
Three-quarter vote for stabilization to go in or out.
What, 9/10?
3/4.
Not 9/10.
Stabilization is
Two-thirds or
three-quarters.
three-quarters.
In or out. So if you want to put money in there, it has to be voted. If you want to take money out, it's got to be voted on.
So following that discussion, that leads us right into net school spending. And for those of you who don't know, the town is not meeting its requirement for net school spending this year, so we need to fix that problem first. So, I have the,
I'm presenting. Bobby is kind enough to be my click the button human.
Sneak back.
Or we'll upgrade it to my personal assistant. Bobby, can you hit the next? Oh, thank you. Good job. So over the past several weeks, what we've been doing is we've been learning more about net school spending. Apparently, net school spending is one of those topics that everyone just loves to talk about and totally understands. So it has been our favorite conversation. I've met numerous times at this point with Bobby and Cindy and Craig and Bobby and me and Eliza, where are you? There you are, principal of Norris. And we've met, everyone at this point has been engaged in this conversation because it's such a fun one and just so easy to understand. So the basics of net school spending, what is it? Well, it's a minimum level of spending needed to provide an adequate education for students. Who comes up with that number? Not us. The state likes to come up with that number for us. Cindy, do you want to just add a word of how the state likes to come up with that number with the division?
In 1993, the state legislature, on the recommendation of a bunch of educators and economists, put together a template for what does it cost to run a school to provide a basic adequate education. And in the legislation, there are various formulas. So many kids per teacher, so much money per textbooks, per student, and depending on your level, elementary, middle, or high school, so much money for out-of-district tuitions, a percentage of how many students you should have and spend in school and out of school. So this whole template was put together, and what it forms is the basis for the foundation budget, which is, this is the amount of money that a school district needs to minimally provide an adequate education for students. If a town chooses to, they can go above that minimum, they can't go below.
Thank you, Cindy. So Cindy pointed out one of the three components to net school spending: the foundation budget, the local contribution, and then the Chapter 78. What we're going to be most concerned about today with is the local contribution. Bobby? Thank you. So Southampton itself, we have two essential foundation budgets. One's for Hampshire Regional School, and the other one is for everything else. What's everything else? Well, it's our elementary, but it's a little bit bigger than that. The state, for some reason, thought it was a wise idea when they were creating this, that they'd group some things in for us. So we have Norris, charter tuition, Smith Vocational, and school choice. Thank you. So net school spending over the years, we have a little view of this. So in 2014, we were required, our net required spending was actually $5,142,661. But we went over the minimum, and we actually spent $5,224,081. So as you can see in this case, blue is what our actuals were, and red is the net that we were required. And the blue is much higher than the net, so we did what the state would say was a good job. In 2015, our current budget, as it is right now, we are required to spend $5,309,041. Well, so far we've only put $5,242,605. So as you can see in this case, the net required is higher than the actual. Now, just to back up a second, because I think I forgot a step when I was explaining this, right now we're mostly concerned with the elementary net school spending. Hampshire is great. We overspend Hampshire, no problem. Everyone's happy with Hampshire, we're happy with Hampshire. By overspend, I mean we minimally meet the requirements necessary, and then we might go over a few extra dollars in the course of doing so. Is that better? Thank you. Okay. For the elementary budget, we haven't got that close yet. So what ends up happening is you have the 2014, the 2015, and then I like to say the adjusted 2015. What does that mean? Well, as you can see in the first 2015 piece, there's a gap between where we actually are and the net required. And that's a $66,000 gap. Well, what happens? Well, the year goes on and things change. Well, if you remember, one of the components of this spending was actually Smith Vocational School. Smith Vocational School is always an interesting variable for us because freshmen sign up at the beginning of the year and they may go, they may not go. We don't really find out until the middle of the fall. So at this point, we've got our tuition numbers in and we found out that there was a bunch of kids who weren't going this year. So we originally had budgeted a large amount for Smith Vocational, and now our bill amount has dropped. But remember, that was money we had put in towards the net school spending. So what happens when less kids end up going to Smith Vocational? Even though our money's kind of already budgeted and appropriated for that cause right now, at the end of the year, we'll end up getting it back as free cash. However, the problem is the state's gonna say, our net school spending, the blue box, drops. And now, instead of your $66,000 gap you saw in the prior box, you now have $101,000 plus $66,000. So you're looking closer to $170,000 variance. Next slide, Ms. Bobby, please. So, our problems. We are currently, based on all of our numbers, we are underfunding net school spending. And the state does not hesitate to remind us, and they sent us a reminder letter just to let us know. But unfortunately, when the state sent us the letter, we were only $66,000 under because they didn't calculate in Smith Vocational. So, as of that, right now, we are looking at $176,109 approximately that we're under. Now, net school spending under Chapter 70 requires us to spend, by law, 95% of net school spending, or meet 95%. They want us to spend 100, and we should spend meet 100. But right now, if you meet 95%, there's no penalties or anything else. But again, we need to make sure we're trying to reach the 100 as the state wants us to, and as we should in order to educate the kids. So this, Bobby, you're getting ahead of me here. Oh, you read down my slide. Okay, in that case, we can move on. Thank you. All right, so let's go back to Smith Vocational for a second. So Smith Vocational in FY15, we appropriate $868,000 and some change, but our actual numbers are closer to $766,000. We played a little bit with the calculations here and there, and they still could change, but ultimately the difference so far that we've calculated is about $101,384 on the conservative end, I'd say. So, how do we close this gap to get closer to our minimum net school spending? Well, one thing we can do is we can actually do a line item transfer at special town meeting in January. We can take the additional money that we know we're not being charged for at Smith Vocational that we had previously appropriated and transfer it over to the Norris School line so that Norris School, both A, would get an advantage there, and B, we'd be able to get closer to meeting our net school spending minimum. The second thing we can do is, right now, Norris is in the need of a water heater. This is one of those things we were talking about before, where we've been neglecting a lot of our capital projects over the years because we don't have a lot of funds in that line. So they needed a water heater, and we're in the process of purchasing one. It's about $12,000. So it would be a act of good faith if we were to put an article on a special town meeting in the amount of $12,000 in order to appropriate such amount of money from free cash in order to transfer to Norris for the purpose of purchasing said water heater. The other thing we're looking at is indirect costs. What are indirect costs? Well, similar to how we have indirect costs for the enterprise funds, we also have indirect costs for the school department. We're allowed to allocate certain things that we do to the school department's line in order to calculate more of our net school spending. So sometimes we do a portion of what the highway department would do for plowing for us over at the school. We would allocate to them some indirect costs for the portion of health insurance that the school employees utilize, such things like that. We did a few modifications today just to calculate our numbers a little bit better. This year we got bombarded with a lot of unemployment since we laid off some people, and we had a couple other issues, school-related, that kind of raised our bills quite high. So in modifying our numbers, we actually were able to, at this point, calculate another $25,000 to indirect costs. So that doesn't cost the town anything initially or anything at all, rather we're just putting it on the calculation sheet so it gives us credit there.
On top of the 10 that's already there?
Yes, so it would come to a total of 35. Now, based on all this, our adjusted variance is 56,384. So right now we're good because we started out with originally 66,000, then we went to 170, and now we're down to 56. So we're making improvement. We're getting somewhere. Here's the problem. So if we're not paying, good job, Bubby. So if we're not paying close attention to what's happening with everything, including our indirect costs, because what happens if for whatever reason our insurance numbers come out lower than what they were? What happens if the highway department spends less than what we predicted them to? Or any of the other variables? What happens if we actually get funding for the unemployment and then we can't attribute the 35,000 in that direction? It's going to shift our number. So our 56,000 could easily escalate higher. So it's one of those things we need to pay attention. That's, I think I'm done my piece. I know that's interesting ending, but I pay attention, I think, is my end line. Cindy, did I miss anything?
Is it true to say that if we transferred $75,000 from Smith to Norris, paid for the water heater, and increased the unemployment, it would put us at 99% of net school spending?
The 66 is currently 1.25, I think, based on the states.
So close to? Close.
Close, but, you know, the problem with, when we were all talking about the 66, everyone went, oh, no problem. We'll never get close to 95, you know, spending 90, below 90, you know, 95. But we did, because of the vote. And that's what Heather was saying about, we really need to watch, make sure that the expenditures are on to where our goal is, so that we don't end up dropping below.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure I'm hearing it right. The 75, or the money that we're gonna pay Smith Vocational, what was the number again?
$75,000.
$75,000. That comes back because we didn't have the same amount of students going as we thought. It doesn't decrease the money we gave to Norris for the current students. It just takes it from one pot and makes
Puts
the
it into
percentage
another.
look smaller.
Yes.
So we're not taking away anything from the kids that are there.
No, so the reason, if you notice the difference on the number, it was originally $101,000, that's the variance for Smith Vocational. The reason we only want to take about 75, we want to leave some there because you don't know what's going to happen with Smith. You could have a new student move into town that we're going to have to pick up the cost for. You could have someone who now needs special services, so we now develop the, or rather acquire the extra bill for those costs. So we want to make sure that we're not devastating our own line to the point where, you know, at the end of the year now we have to.
I guess that's my point.
Have
I mean,
additional money
if we
go
do
in.
nothing and don't touch the 70, leave it just sitting there and it comes back in free cash, as long as we stay between the 95 and 100%, we're fine. It's not going to hurt the students. We're not taking away. It's just it's a bookkeeping issue because students didn't go.
Dr. Jorgensen?
I'm going to ask Mrs. Landers to explain that it's more than a bookkeeping issue. If you don't meet the 95%, there is a penalty.
Right.
If you don't meet it, I think we should keep track of where it is for sure.
Oh,
But we don't need to take the money right away and put it in there, as long as it's not going to affect the kids in school.
Well, I'm going to ask Mrs. Landers to talk about the penalty, but I think also that we need to consider if this money is going to be transferred, it needs to be transferred at a time during the school year when it can be meaningfully expended and applied to services at the Norris. If that $75,000 is transferred in April or May, it's going to appear wasteful as we try to hire or try to provide services to kids in the last 2 months of school.
But this would be new services, new hires, something that's not in the budget right now.
or restoration in.
But something
part
that's not in the
of
budget right
something we
now.
got Last year, yes.
Okay, so it's an addition to the budget we approved, that's the point I want to
Yes.
make.
Yes. Does the administration feel positive about this plan?
We feel very positive about the plan. We do not have any plan for spending the money at this time. Mr. Pluta and I have talked about the eventuality or the possibility of additional funds. We will meet with the school staff tomorrow and talk about ideas. We had a school committee meeting scheduled for this evening that we are rescheduling for early January when we can go to the school committee with our recommendations, should the board make that transfer.
And just for my own knowledge, what is the penalty if you, I don't want that to happen, but what is the penalty?
And actually, Southampton did experience a penalty back about 10 years ago. What happens is if you drop below the 95%, you have to pay 15% of the difference between that you dropped below the 95%, what you're spending versus the 95%. And that difference you have to put into the next year's budget.
So you get penalized on it and you have to add additional funds.
You have to add additional funds, so in addition to the net school spending for the next year, you also have to add the deficit of the difference between 95 and whatever your expenditures are.
Did I also read that they won't approve your tax rate? I think they said
If you
they
go
will, if you go below 95, I think they won't approve your tax rate. I think I read that somewhere.
I think I've read that as well.
Yeah.
And just to give you an example, I heard and read that the city of Taunton has a $700,000 net school spending deficit and penalties because they weren't under their net school spending. So let's leave it. I don't know if you guys heard that one, but yeah, it's $700,000.
I mean, you know, really 50% of whatever number, plus moving that number, you know, then having to come up with that in the next year's budget can get costly.
And do we feel like leaving that $25,000 in the voc line is sufficient number?
Oh, I probably, because, at this point, if you had someone come for, say, the January term, it's half the tuition, so that's approximately 2 kids here.
And that usually only happens when students change residence. We aren't accepting new students,
Okay.
but it's a change of residence. Somebody from Northampton, Easthampton moves to Southampton but continues the Smith location.
Can I ask a continuation of that? What happens if we need more than a $25,000? Is that coming from the Norris School budget, or is it going to come back to the town looking for more?
I think we should look to Heather.
25 you mean in the voc school budget?
So we need to have more than 25, we
So you
need to
need
have
30.
40.
So if we got to May and we knew we needed more, we have the May's annual town meeting before we get to the end of the budget year.
So it wouldn't come
So we
from
can
the
do a
money we
transfer
already-
from operating or whatever if we needed to.
So it wouldn't come from the money we already gave them on top of the budget?
I think we're operating under good faith at this point, and we're trying to do the best we can based on the information and the numbers and everything else we have. We took, and Cindy, myself, and Bobby ran the numbers again after Don and I did the other day about Smith Vocational. We multiplied times 3, we double-checked the number of school days, double-checked the number of students, made sure everything corresponded with all the information we had in front of us. And based on the information, we made a rational estimation of what was gonna happen based on the facts in front of us. And as you know, they can change any day. Maybe 5 kids all belong to a family, there's a couple sets of twins, and they decide they're gonna move to New Hampshire. So the number changes and gets less. You could have someone move in.
Move into Southampton, yeah. I
Cross your
guess-
fingers on that one.
I guess my thought is, we went through a real tough budget process, and I personally think we should stick to it, but that's my comment.
Are there any other comments from the board? So at this time, I would accept a motion from the board to transfer $75,000 from the Smith. Okay.
So it would be
You
for
need
an
us to approve it to
article.
put it on the article?
Oh, you have to write an article.
But if you
Yeah,
want,
it's
we have
already
articles a
did.
little bit later, if you wanna wait until
Wait
we get
till
to
then.
that.
So can we send the school committee on their way in good faith that this is where we're headed? Sending them?
I think if we can just have them address one point real quick. We did a press release on the free cash piece last week. And we did get some feedback on Facebook on it. And one of the concerns came from some of the residents, or parents rather, was pertaining to, you know, you have this free cash now, and this year we had to, we ended up starting a $25,000 transportation fee to the parents, and they want to know, you know, would we be reimbursed, or is this something that can go away next year as a result of the free cash? And I don't know if we have any commentary from the school department on this piece.
The first comment is that that's my understanding, that taking money from this $75,000 and applying it to transportation does not count toward net school spending. So we're not making up the difference. So the administration is not considering changing the bus fee or the bus fee structure in light of this funding, because we're moving backwards. We're not moving the direction we want to go.
Plus, it's not, as you passed that, the transportation budget is a separate line item. And again, it's not part of the foundation budget.
And then finally, we have experienced, I mean, I don't want to be over dramatic, but some pain in terms of services that are not being provided to students, or some of the supports at Norris as a result of the reduction from last year. And I really would like to see, I'm going to insist that it goes into services for students, and I think Mrs. Pluta would agree. So not transportation.
So can we move forward from here now?
I'm sure, I just wanted to, you had been asking earlier, or there was a question, sorry, I'm just trying to, I had this typed up somewhere else, and of course, I didn't save it, so I wanted to type it up again real quick. Let's see, let's see, can I select all? Bingo. I'll make it bigger, I'm working on it. Give me 1 minute.
A lot bigger than this, Heather.
Yeah, but it will go to full slide in a second. There we go. Okay, so just looking at where we actually need to put money from free cash as of right now, or we can even take it from operating, but these are some things that are out there that we need to resolve. As we go forward, whenever we realize there's an issue or there's a gap or there's a problem, we try to address it as soon as we realize it's out there. One of the things we realized this year was that our winter wages and expense line were not where they needed to be. In order to deficit spend for our winter roads, we actually are required to appropriate at least $1 more from the previous year's appropriation. So if in FY14 we appropriated $1, FY15 we'd have to appropriate $2 in order to be covered. Right now we are under. Winter expenses were under by approximately 6,000. Winter wages were under by approximately 14,000. Now mind you, it's a little bit less than that, but I wasn't going to play pulling hairs on this one. I just rounded up to the next $1,000 figure instead of figuring out the $272 or the $986. This would put us at where we needed to be for the winter roads and winter roads and expenses, so that we wouldn't have any problem with regards to if we need to deficit spend this year. And I don't, Ed, has there ever been a year we haven't deficit spend in winter roads?
There's a couple.
But not many. Okay. So we want to make sure we have it just in case we need it, because like anything else, you always want to make sure that your insurance policy is there when you need it. Speaking of insurance, insurance rates went up on us this year a little bit for various reasons, including the fact that I believe under workman's comp, I think they even did they do an audit this year? Was that it, Vicki? Do you remember?
What?
A workman's comp insurance? One of the insurances went up by itself, and I know the Hartford went up as well.
Some of them went up, but that one budget line item, we didn't put in enough compared to what we spent last year, and it went up a couple $1,000. But I don't believe workman's comp, they did do an audit, but they do an audit every year.
Okay. So ultimately, we ended up with, currently we're running a $5,029 deficit in insurance. As far as DUA, unemployment, we got hit very hard on this. This is what we were talking about from the schools end of net school spending and indirect costs. But based on our numbers and projections, and this is again pretty much our maximum liability as of the people who are currently involved right now. This could change any day. If people end up finding jobs, it could go down. If someone else ends up being laid off, or there's any concern over different things, we could see a higher number. But in order to make our numbers even as of right now, we'd have to put in $35,493 to balance the books and have a little bit extra money to pay people continually going forward for the next couple months.
Heather, is this all projected till the end of the year or up till now?
The insurance will be caught up, as far as, and that's, for the most part, I mean, the one thing we don't generally predict is if we have to pay any deductibles. Sometimes we end up with a claim, we have a deductible, sometimes we don't, and sometimes, you know, you'll go a long time and you'll never see a claim, and other times you get.
Still may need an adjustment. plus
It may, I mean, we're trying to be, again, conservative, but where it's such a small amount, and it is really usually about $1,000 a hit per deductible. So, I mean, that's something if we need to, we can put in May, or we can do, once we get to May, Vicki, we can do line item transfers ourselves.
April 30th.
April 30th. So we wouldn't have to go to town meeting to do so, if needed. The next, or at least from the general budget. If we're going outside the general ledger and we're pulling money in from free cash or pulling money in from the operating, then we'd have to go to town meeting regardless. The next item I plugged in there was the water heater, because that's something we had spoken about. There you are. Yes, nice. Can you just tell us a little bit about what's happening with the water heater so the board of selectmen knows
The condition of it?
why it needs to be replaced?
Right, so, my custodian has been monitoring the water heater for a few months now, and it's pretty corroded on the top of the water heater, and then we sent out for 3 bids, or quotes for the, heater, we received 2 back, and that's a pretty good number right there, that we would be able to get the job done with that amount.
Is it functioning now?
It is functioning.
As a plumber looked at it, I mean, corrosion on the top doesn't mean it's failing.
No, we had people come in and actually look at it. It's sweating profusely, and the rust on the top of it is almost porous.
That's for one hot water heater?
And I think it has some controls.
It does have some, it does have some uneven heating around the building and due to it.
So the hot water has uneven heating around?
That's
It's
why,
all connected to the heating system of the school.
So the hot water heater is running off the hot water heat?
I think they're connected in terms of the.
So it's just a vessel that doesn't,
It's not just the vessels we have in our home, it's a more complicated fix.
it's tied into the heating system?
I believe it is.
So it's just almost like a reservoir.
Probably has controls on it.
The other 2 items I added on here are things that have been put in the packet for potential articles. For those who remember the public safety complex, they have talked, and Mr. Bray has been very cooperative with regards to leaving open the possibility of purchasing his property that is already perked for the septic system, potential septic system for the future public safety complex. We are currently in the process of having the feasibility study done for the public safety complex, but the one thing that we're waiting on is purchasing the property in order to actually put a septic system. After such time that a purchase has actually occurred, then we can take all of the deeds. If folks remember, over the past couple of years, we found out that there's several different deeds connected to this town property just right here. I think there was like 6 or more at one point, and actually have them all consolidated into one piece. So town of Southampton's deed, and that would be that. The cost for the property to purchase it is $30,000, and the cost for the legal fees associated with filing everything would be about $4,000. Whether the board wants to move forward on this is up to the board, but these are everything listed out of things that are potential articles right now in their packet, which we can go over. But this total is about $106,522. And if you remember from earlier, it was $127,000, give or take some change, that we actually have to play with based on the Board of Selectmen's policy established a couple weeks ago. So one of the recommendations, just to keep in mind from DOR, and I'm sure Vicki can comment on this as well, is, you know, they generally suggest it's a great idea to actually have some free cash roll forward, because you don't know what you're going to get into through the year. You know, this was, I think, one of the first year that we very tightly budgeted everything. So we may not be seeing people turn around at the end of the year and actually have leftover money in their budgets.
So if the free cash goes as we have planned it and laid out, we've got, after this, if everything gets approved, we have like $21,000 in free cash left over for emergencies. If one department needs it at the end of the year, so that's tight.
Mm-hmm.
That's real tight.
The water heater, we could take out of capital stabilization if we needed to?
Well, the one problem with capital stabilization is this. Years ago, and I can't tell you what year, a bylaw was actually created for the Capital Improvement Committee. We've been hit numerous times by the auditors because we're not following our own bylaws with regards to our capital improvement projects. All capital improvement projects are supposed to go through the Capital Improvement Committee before being put before the town. Capital Improvement Committee now has 4 out of 5 members. They are going to start meeting in January, and all of the departments have actually received capital improvement request forms, including the school department, for any issues that they may have that they wish to have funded. However, remember that the capital improvement idea is you're supposed to get it funded before you actually purchase the water heater. And I think in this case, we may need the water heater before the paperwork.
Heather, I have a question.
Sure.
I know you monitor the budgets. Are there any other red flags coming up that we should be thinking about before the end of the year?
We have to transfer $28 at some point.
The what?
We have, there was $28, Vicky, left over, and was it Larrabee renovations?
Correct, in 2000.
Yeah, but what I'm concerned about is that we had to make some cuts. And one thing that comes to mind is the reserve fund.
Mm-hmm.
What is that at right now?
Well, the reserve fund currently is getting hit because we're trying to pay for the bills out of the building department, and until we go to January and we can transfer the money where it actually needs to come from. I guess I can back up for a second. So we've talked about this in previous meetings, but what happened essentially was Rich left at the end of July, and once he left, anyone who was filling the position until we had a full-time person was designated as an independent contractor. Independent contractors aren't supposed to be paid out of the salary line, they're supposed to be paid out of the expense line. So we have this $50,000 line item that we can't touch. So we're paying people out of this expense line that's only got like $5,000 or $6,000 out of it in it. So it's getting completely wiped out very quickly. And what ends up happening is you're like, okay, well, we have no more money in the expense line because we've just paid for
Once we fix
people.
that, what's the number at?
What's the
Once
number
we
after
fix
the
problem,
reserve?
What's the reserve number gonna be?
I don't think it's gonna be too, Vicky, do you know if there's been any requests in it outside of building?
Currently, there's $6,647,000 in reserve.
600 and what?
$6,647.37.
And what do we start off with?
10.
10.
So we reduced that from 35 to 10.
Yeah, with the budget.
I mean, I would take a look at that and look at if you anticipate any shortfalls where we don't have any controls. At least we can boost up the reserve fund a little bit so the finance committee can address some of those things. Maybe not all of them, but having this kind of money going in to a tough year with the budgets they are, we're gonna need to put some money in reserve. That's my feeling.
Plus, I just looked at the expense report that Vicky's office sent out, which is as of 12/15. And if you extrapolate the numbers in there, it looks pretty good, but if you extrapolate, $20,000 is gonna get eaten up quick if it continues the way it is. So we're gonna need much more than the $20,000. So I don't have a real comfort level with everything there, but some of them we have to do.
Well, in years past, when you talk about winter expenses and winter roads, we have sent that letter to the DOR to say, yes, we can deficit spend, but we have been able to cover that deficit spend by whatever's been left over, whether it be in the same general highway wages or road and machinery or other line items to cover that deficit spend. If we had a big deficit spend this year and everyone spent all of their budgets, we would need money to support that and cover that, or that needs to get raised on your taxes the next year. I mean, what happens is with making sure that the budget is from last year, it just allows us to deficit spend because Mass General Law says it's illegal, but we still need to cover that deficit. Doesn't mean we can just leave it there and, well, we can deficit spend and we're done. We still need to cover it, and in previous years, we've been covering it by other people's budgets. So if those budgets are tight, and there's no money here and there's no money there, we're kind of stuck.
Yeah, and I think the more we,
Just about,
the more we lean on the departments to stay within their budget, the more we need some extra money in case something blips on us. You know,
Well,
in the past, we had
And that
some
could be a
extra.
blip.
The only reason I'd like to see it go to reserve, there's a level of scrutiny
Yep.
that goes there with
Yep.
it.
I agree.
What else do you need from us, Heather, moving forward with this tonight?
Well, I have articles to talk about a little bit later, so if we wanna rest on, I have nothing else on this piece tonight, but I know we have a very packed agenda with some other things.
Well, that's not necessary.
Nilda?
I have a question on there were two articles that I recall correctly in the October special town meeting that were passed over to the public safety complex project. So is this taking the place of those two articles that were passed over? Because there was a question about conservation.
Yes,
So that's this now.
yes.
Okay.
If there's no further questions about this, we're going to move on.
One more question, actually, I'm remembering now about that. Wasn't there a problem with putting a septic system in that land?
No, there's no problem. It
Only if
works,
you use
everything's
conservation funds.
The money.
It was where the funds were coming from.
CPA funds.
Sorry, whatever I said.
Thank you.
So thank you, school administration, for coming. Thanks for.
Yeah.
Stay in the morning. I'm gonna skip up.
He went to get Tom.
I was just gonna skip up to the park commission.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna move up to the park commission because Mr. Reed's been sitting here patiently waiting for us to get up to him.
He had a
So
birthday
he's
wedding.
here to talk about, the Conant Park erosion. Mr. Reed, ready. How are you? Thanks for sitting patiently.
Yes. Randall Kemp received a phone call from the dispatcher on 12/6 of a potential problem at the Conant Park that was reported by a resident of erosion coming from the pond, going around the spillway. And I have some pictures that he took. And what had happened is within the pond, there's a control structure, a catch basin control structure that got plugged, and the pond rose in the height of it by 2 feet, and proceeded to go around the emergency spillway and cause the erosion that you see there today.
Where is that in relation to the baseball
The
field?
baseball field is right.
Oh, this is that hill you
Yeah,
go
the
down
hill,
to
you
cross
walk down
over?
the hill and walk
Okay,
across the
Okay.
dam. He proceeded to clean the outlet structure, and this picture on the right is the amount of water flowing out of it. And it is currently functioning as it should, but we have a serious erosion problem that we need to address. Last night, I was at the Conservation Commission and discussed it with them too, about getting an emergency order to allow us to go in and do the repairs. I then went around to look at another area of concern that we have from stormwater that comes from the library and makes its way down to the parking lot in front of the pavilion, and found that we have another issue that has occurred in the recent months from this area here.
Waterfall.
And the bulk of that erosion is coming from, a good portion of it comes from the library parking lot area, behind the library.
There's also a pipe that's connected
Right.
in the backside into that same.
Right. So I looked at that area, and that's stable. Right here, the pipe that comes across is right here. And some years ago, the highway department added rock, did a good job of stabilizing that area. So that's not a problem. That's not causing any erosion. But this area here is to the library side of that pipe coming across it.
So how do you
What do we do?
fill this back in?
How do we fix it?
Do you just dump fill in there and level it and?
No, you can't. I've talked to Randall about it, and the two areas, let's talk about the dam first, I guess, is that, as you can see, there's stone, large riprap stone, currently where the pipe comes out. So in order to stabilize this
area here behind the snow fence there, you would have to put large rocks in this area here. You'd probably have to add some rocks to the erosion area, because at the time of the year, you can't get anything to grow and stabilize, and then add soil so that in next year, you can walk across the dam like you always did to get between the pavilion and the...
So the rocks would stabilize the soil?
Right. So it would be a temporary fix now, and then more work in the spring, once you can get grass to grow and vegetation to grow.
Well, you know the conditions out there, you can't go out there in the spring without
Well,
a tremendous amount of damage. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna get the rock in there, into the ground's really frozen.
Correct.
You'll save yourself a lot of aggravation.
Correct. And that's what we've been talking about, is waiting until the ground's frozen, because the park is very soft right now. with
Who's
all the
gonna pay
rain
for
we
this?
had. Excuse me?
Who's gonna pay for this?
Well, that's why I'm here.
I was hoping you had a different answer.
The reserve fund.
How much is it gonna cost?
Money in there.
We don't
know?
don't know.
Okay.
But it's twofold, some now, some in the
Correct.
summer, right?
Correct. Correct. So that's why I'm here. Currently, the park has zero money in its budget for personnel. And we have still the spring and going into July to mow the grass. So we have no money to pay the highway department to mow the grass. We have some money in the account to put gas in the mower, but we have no one to drive the mower.
Your budget's not even set up for that.
Right.
When things like this happen in the past, and they've happened in the past, the highway department did it.
Right.
They used their forces, their equipment, and their material.
We are in conversations about implementing user fees and we've had lots of discussions that we're working on now, and we'd like to come before the board in the future to discuss it, but, to generate some monies to offset the cost of maintaining the parks. We have the Woodbury Field now that needs to be maintained, so this is the first year that we've taken on Woodbury Field at the end of the year here, as far as mowing and maintaining that field there too.
And next year is gonna be the first active year for those.
Correct.
Okay.
So
As of right now, no one's using Woodbury Field.
So I guess before we can move forward with this, we have to figure out how much it's gonna cost. Is that true?
But if it said the highway department can do it.
Well, we have done it in the past. I don't know if Randall wants to do it. I mean, I'm not telling him what he's gotta do, but these are things that we've done in the past. It costs money.
So we
Would it
need
be
to
just-
talk with Randall, we can't just
Right.
make a decision
Well,
for
somebody's
him.
gonna have to draw a scope of work, and they're gonna have to do it under the guidelines of what they can do in that area, because the conservation has certain requirements. I have to work that out. I don't anticipate,
It might be a possibility that we can
He's gotta
just
come up
pay
with
for
some
the
numbers.
materials if Randall's folks can do it.
well, what we've done in the past, we've diverted labor from other projects. This time of year, we use the labor for other projects, and we would go over there and do it. We have the equipment. We need to come up with a source of funding for these, at least the material,
It's a perfect free cash type of item. Can we use operational stabilization for the materials?
Somebody's got to draw up the scope of, what the scope of work's gonna be, what's gonna cost, and,
Who does that, Randall?
Randall would have to do
Okay,
that.
so let's get Randall involved and have
Sure.
him draw that up and figure out what
He
it
and
would
I have
cost.
talked, about, the highway department can do the work, or could do the work. It's a matter of, like Ed said, how it gets budgeted through
Right.
the process.
I mean, somebody's got to come up with the expenses, and that's
Correct.
not, what are you talking, 6, 8-inch gauge trap rock in there?
Right.
I don't want the round stuff.
No, right. Same as what was put in the other side of the dam area, because that's working great. There's no issues with it.
Is there a critical time frame with this, like get it in before the snow hits, so
Well,
Wait for the ground to
my
freeze to even get it.
my suggestion, and I'm not running the department right now, but is that the ground freezes, you're gonna save yourself a lot of labor and a lot of destructive, work. Because that's all clay in there. You're gonna sink out of sight if it's not frozen solid. My suggestion is stay off the ball field side, come in from the tennis court size, and minimize your damage. Work along the areas you're gonna disturb anyways.
My only concern with that is then the large trucks are gonna back across the.
Well, I mean, I dump the trucks and use the loaders and bring them in.
Yeah, back and forth.
That's what I would do, but, you know.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be done when the ground is frozen to minimize, you know, any.
But before spring, so that.
But before, yeah, once spring
Before,
comes.
before the frost comes out of the ground,
We're in,
because that's
we're
gonna
in
be
big
even
trouble.
worse.
You know, if we don't do something with it, we're gonna lose the whole pond, right? Because that whole dam is gonna wash away. If we just ignore it. And.
You know, the funny part of it, Mark, is years ago, that was, this is where the overflow went.
Right.
Really, it did. That's what.
Oh, yeah,
There
correct.
was an ice skating rink there, that's where it went. But and it's just the soil conditions there were fill, and a lot of that's clay, and it's just
Right.
a matter of time.
And we still need to maintain that as an emergency overflow,
Yeah.
but it never had the proper stone and design in this area here that's the serious erosion problem. So,
Yeah.
So I'm glad to work with Randall.
Yep.
And come up with something and try to figure it out, but I want to bring it before the board to make you aware of it.
So then once you talk to Randall, maybe we can get back
Can I
together
hold
with
on?
him
You can
and
have
you,
one.
Thank you.
so we can have more
Yeah.
conversation.
I don't know if you want these for your
Oh,
file.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you,
waiting
Mark.
patiently. Okay. Next, we have Tom Quinlan with, Jim Fisher's not here, right?
No,
Yeah, with Mr. Sears to present their proposed change of fees and explain their current pay schedules. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming. I'm ready. I was not at the last meeting where we talked about increasing fees, so.
I preferred all this to have to work with these people.
So where we have it highlighted, we could raise those $10.
Does this reflect the increased rate or no?
Pardon?
Is this what the rate is now, or is it
That's
with the?
exactly what they are right now.
Okay, so they would be $10 more than that?
Right, on those areas.
Okay,
And then, on the sheet that we break down to give for the account and stuff, we make another column for a $10 fee, so we can keep track of that.
so right now,
Say new residential building, $80, okay. Each additional fixture, what does that mean?
Right there's, I believe, it's $10.
No, but I mean, what's an additional fixture based on this?
We'll say, your kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Okay, that's included in the first fee.
So that's one fixture. But if I
That's
have two more
included in the first
bathrooms?
one. And if you have, bathroom, toilet,
Yeah.
shower, and a sink, so then there's another $30.
Okay,
That's per fixture.
okay, so the kitchen, I get hardly 80. If I have 3 bathrooms with 3 fixtures, that's 9 times 10, $90. Okay.
And
Right.
what do you charge for a rough inspection?
It's, we do 80%, you know, we have the 20,
Yeah.
and then we're back at the house maybe 4 or 5 times.
And what do you charge each time you go there?
Well, I'll give you, if you have a $100 fee,
Yeah.
okay, for the house. Tom gets it $20, inspectors get the $80. That $80 is
That's 4
taxed.
inspections?
Out of that $80, you're going to have 4 inspections. That's 4 trips.
so you charge once and you go 4 times.
Or as many times as needed.
Or yeah, but you're going to have a minimum time 2 times. Right? But there's 3 times. And some jobs you might be there 5 times, but you know, any new house is minimum 4 times anyways.
Okay. But it's all included in that one fee.
Yeah. And then it's how big the house, you know, how many bathrooms they have.
If I put a sink in the cellar or a slop sink, something, is that an additional fixture? Wherever there's a
If-
faucet or
well,
toilet?
No, if you did it one time, I think it'd be $45. This was before. For plumbing, for residential. Because the initial fee would include the one fixture.
Even if I had another one in the cellar?
This is a one-time you put in another sink
No, I mean during new construction.
during the construction.
Yeah, so I've got the one sink for you know, in the 80, and I count the bathrooms up.
Yep.
And if I put a sink in the cellar for my clothes, is that another one?
$10.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So you add them all up?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Outside spigots don't get count for
No,
that? Okay.
no.
I'm just confused. So I got this from Kevin, and where did these fees come from?
That was the one, so you may want the one on the back. I think the one on the back is, one says one's for plumbing, one's for electrical. That was based on what I was given to prepare for the last meeting.
Okay, so these are currently they're $80, proposed 100, which would change 20, and you are proposing 80 and raising it only by 10.
Unless something has changed.
Is that true?
I'm just on the highlight.
This is what was proposed by Heather?
That's what I was given to prepare for the last meeting, that's what I was told.
Yes, because I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
That could have changed without me knowing about it.
Yes, that's
It
what
went
I'm
up
looking
$20,
at.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I haven't reviewed that since the last meeting, so if something was discussed and changed, it's not reflected.
When you were at the last meeting and these were presented, were they approved, the increases approved
No,
by the board?
nothing was approved. We
Nothing was
gave them all
approved
back
by
to
the
Heather
board?
To work with the inspectors.
Okay, and so were there any changes made with the inspectors with Heather?
That's what you were given, Kevin to type up, right, is that correct, or?
The first one?
Yes.
Did you, how many copies from that first sheet I had?
There's one copy that I had given that where it's currently 80, correct?
Yeah.
And then
Just like here, right?
and then the proposed was 100.
Right.
So a change of $20.
Yeah.
So this paper I'm looking at then is correct, per your conversations?
I have to match that with whatever paperwork I had prior.
Because now it says each additional fixture $10 now, and on this one it says it's going up to 15, is that accurate? This is it, but this is the one I'm looking at, same she has. It says it goes up to 15, each additional fixture. So a change of $5.
I was
That's
given
the one
I was
Kevin-
given a sheet about 3 weeks ago
Yeah,
with
that's-
markups,
Yeah.
and that's what I went by.
I don't think any of us talked about that.
No, I don't think so. There was
No.
you guys are supposed to go back and sit down with Heather
Yeah.
and have this discussion, so we wouldn't be having this discussion here now. So
I think,
obviously.
no, I think, I wanted to get together with her, but she was unavailable. Right. So I said, I can make it on the 16th, around 8 o'clock.
Right, so this is the new proposal, just make it simpler and just add the 10 per big inspection.
So this
Okay, so
current one plus
ignore
10.
what I gave you then, because I
Okay.
wasn't aware it was updated since then.
So now I'm looking at this and
Okay.
adding 10, but only to the big inspections and leaving everything else the
Everything is
same.
highlighted?
Yeah,
Add
10.
$10 to it,
Right.
and leave
Right.
everything else the same.
Right.
And as a building inspector, how do you feel about that? Does that seem okay with you?
That's fine, I mean.
Okay, so the addition of the $10 is okay?
So revenue generating, we're gonna see 20% of the increase.
Well, we have,
Well,
You're gonna have 20% of the permit, plus the $10.
Plus the $10? That all comes to us, or you get 80% of that?
No, that $10 goes to the town.
so
Okay.
So
the,
it's gonna be, we'll say on the $100 fee?
Yeah.
Okay, so the town's getting $20,
Yeah,
plus 10.
okay.
okay, but the electrical inspector gets what?
That's a different, it's $50 an inspection now.
Yeah,
It's the same thing, 80/20, so it's 40, and his proposal was to go to 60 for every inspection, stay at the 40 for inspection, the town will double its revenue, it'll go to 20.
because we were looking at, you know, I know they made this decision years ago, this 80-20 split, and we were looking at, the town has not been making out on the old numbers at all. We weren't even covering our overhead. So, you know, you're saying now the increase, your 80% of the.
So if you
just
increase this
based
by
on the
90
current $100, the increase is all coming to the town.
On the $10?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, Ed, I'll give you an example. Again, on the $100 fee, the town's initially getting that 20%, plus you're getting another $10. So you're getting the 20% of the 100.
I understand it.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure that the increase, we're getting the whole increase.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
wait a minute, I don't,
So it brings you to under 80%.
No, his 80% is based on the
Right.
old rate. He's staying with the old rate.
Exactly. We're adding the 10, and then we're going to make another column, like when I did for an accountant, I had 3 columns, now I'm going to be a 4th column, to show we're keeping track at $10.
Okay.
This seems all very confusing to me. So why don't we just make all the inspectors, increase the rates, and all the inspectors get $40 per inspection? Wouldn't that make it easier across the board? Then we're not talking about 80-20 splits, it's fair across the board.
Who's gonna pay for the fuel and the cell phone use?
Well, I don't know, but I feel like things need to be consistent.
I mean,
I don't
for
think it should be
$40,
80-20 for
if you
one
have
person,
four-
40 for somebody
If you have
else.
4 inspections, that you have to go out on the same job with the one permit, it's not feasible to do it.
Are you gonna pay him 40 times 4?
No. I
'Cause
mean,
now
how many
he gets
times does the
80.
electrical inspector go out?
His is per inspection. It's based different, so it's, like I said, now he's 50, he wants
I
to.
remember it was originally based the same, of 80-20.
Yes, so now it'll be
Now he's
66,
not
33.
doing that, I mean, I just say we need to be consistent.
I think it needs to be the same across the board, no
But we-
matter what it is. It shouldn't be one for somebody and something for somebody else.
But we need to be fair and make sure it's enough for
No,
them.
I want, if he's got expenses we don't know about, we need to know about, so we can make a decision based
Well-
on what the real costs are.
Yeah, if we just give them a percentage now, like say his car and his cell phone and anything else is not, he takes that out of his fee, is that true?
Well, it's just like, we'll say that $80 I'm getting.
Right.
It's getting I'm getting taxed on it from the town, so that's like
Right.
maybe $66.
But you're paying for your own gas,
I pay for my own fuel,
your cell
my own
phone.
cell phone,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then we'll say, on that $66, I'm probably at minimum 2 inspections.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has a
But
cell phone, but.
all I'm
it's-
saying is,
And
this
plus
is why
we
we
pay for it.
asked
Right.
Heather to meet with you 3 guys to be all on the same page. We don't want to have 3 different
You think
fee schedules out there.
No.
And I know yours is more technical on certain things, and his is more technical on yours, but it should wash out to a common denominator somewhere along the line. My recommendation is, where is Heather?
I don't know. Can you get?
Yeah.
Needs to sit down with these guys and come up with, we shouldn't be doing the arbitrating here. She should be doing this is what she's supposed to do, and resolve this. And we'll come back and look at, we have any questions. That's why I was trying to set that meeting, with you guys.
Right.
And that's the way it should be.
And we try.
I know, it's not gonna have to, it doesn't have to start the 1st of January, we like it. But you guys need to work this out. Because I know bookkeeping needs something
Yes,
consistent.
probably.
All right?
Right.
You've had issues.
I'm on the
in past?
attachments.
Okay, which one?
No?
Oh, you're looking at me?
Inspector
Say that
fees.
again?
You had issues
Two of
of
them,
how people are
inspector
paid
fees.
differently in the building department.
Yeah, I mean, Joyce keeps track of it all, but they're a little different.
One says you
It just
can't
happens to
open,
be
yeah.
that The
They only have
electrical
one
came out to be 80-20, even though it was $40
Yes.
per inspection.
Right.
Plumbing.
I just want to be fair and consistent to people, but if we're not taking things into consideration, like a cell phone and fuel, we need to.
Yeah,
We need to take that into somebody that might just say, I don't want it. But we need to be fair. So when we do something for the next guy that comes in, it's not because, hey, this is what we want to do for you.
Yeah, and Jim would turn in his inspection when he was completed, and if he did 3 inspections, he would get 40, 40, and 40 when he collected it, and it just happened to work out that it was 80%. Where yours isn't that way. It's not 40, 40, 40 per inspection, it's
What I'm
$1
asking,
amount, correct?
and I think you might have
Yeah.
missed what I was saying. I want you to meet with the 3 inspectors
Yeah,
and solidify how these fee structures are going to be fair and consistent amongst the 3 of them, and come back and give us a report. It doesn't have to be for January 1, we'd like to, but it's important that the 3 of them meet with you, and we don't need to have a gripe section here, what he gets, what he doesn't get, and that, you need to resolve that.
So are you looking for the same fee for everybody? Is
I
that-
think it should be something comparably consistent.
Yeah.
Well, if you go through.
Even if you
the
have to go
process
up
of
5 on one
plumbing,
and down on the other, I mean, I want to know that, there's a factor here on inspectors and we can, and inspections, that they're the same.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see how, if that can work out, but yeah.
Well, we're not gonna do it tonight.
No, no.
Heather's gotta do this on the side.
I would like to see this current proposed changed schedule more consistent with what people are thinking. Because I'm looking at this and seeing $80 and then having to add 10 to it, but then looking at this and saying, okay, it's this, I need it to be one.
Plumbers and gas fitters are totally different from electricians.
Mm-hmm. We know that. That's why it's doing.
I just need to look at it in the same format, I guess.
But there's
And-
gotta be some common ground, in here, so we can look at it as selectmen and say, it's fair. And to have one for you, one for him, and one for him, it doesn't make it easy for anybody involved here. So we need to be consistent, we need to take everything into consideration and then come back with this price.
Yeah. So can you get together with them and then we can revisit this?
We can set up something.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming in.
Yes, not wrong.
Do you need this back, Mr. Sears?
No, you guys can have it.
Okay, thank you. All right, now. Where are
We're not gonna get the whole thing.
we? Oh, yes, we are. At this point, where are we, Heather?
We are on 2.32, which you just finished, public safety complex is being all oversold. The 30th.
I would call for open time for the public. Anybody?
I have something for you to sign.
Thank you.
Oh, is this a good time?
If you want to sign it, you can sign it.
All right, bring it on up.
Since I'm here, I have Craig sign it.
What are we signing?
It's the last,
MSBA.
the MSBA paper. The,
Sorry.
the commissioning consultant finally signed it because they actually switched project managers once again.
So I would accept,
This is the third one.
This is the third one that's signed for 3 different people.
Yeah, because first
Did
it
they
was
lose
Mark
them?
Julio, and then it was Clay Sampson, and then this new guy, Eric Backstrom.
We're getting our money.
I would
Oh,
accept
I
a
need this
motion
signed,
to
so-
sign the commissioning certificate of completion for the North School roof.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Right.
And we have Liz on that, Liz on.
Right?
No, Craig already signed it, Jill Phelan signed it, and then I can send it, and then they'll send me all the audit paperwork back, and we'll get our $47,000.
Where does that?
Gonna roll over to free cash?
No.
Oh. I'm
No,
sorry.
because we borrowed money anticipating that was coming in.
Have you heard anything from Mass Highway in regards to that federal highway? Is somebody working on that?
I will pick the ball up again, because I called for a little while, and then I was working on other stuff, so.
I'm not blaming anybody, I know,
No,
forget.
yeah,
you're not
you've
gonna-
gotta just do it every day.
I don't know, TV's.
So, but yeah, we borrowed money in anticipation of this
Okay.
47, so it's not gonna get.
I think it might mean.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. The next item is the snow days and the policy at the town hall that we sent to the PQB, but it went to the PQB and they said this was not something for them to decide. So I guess I don't entirely disagree. It's not a personnel policies procedure policy. It's a board of selectmen policy that says who's gonna call it when it snows. So, what's the board think?
You want
You wanna-
recommendations?
I recommend we continue it to our next meeting and hope it doesn't snow.
Well,
I guess, I mean, if you wanna spend the time to look at the policy again, we can do that tonight.
I wanna know who's gonna call it. I don't think it should be one person. I think if somebody feels that,
The only reason that I had asked to bring it up was because there were occasions last winter when everybody around us was closed. It's snowing profusely, and some people came in, some people didn't come in, some people thought their board should have called them, some people took vacation time, some people didn't take any time, and there needs to be something consistent that says, if we're closing, it's not the decision of the Board of Assessors to close their office, to the town clerk to close her office. Somebody needs to say, the town hall is closed, and if we close it at this time, you're getting paid. If we close it at this time, you know what I mean? There just needs to be something so that everybody's not flying by the seat of their pants and saying, oh, well, I'm gonna take my vacation time, and, oh, no, I couldn't get down my driveway. I'm not, you know, I think there just needs to be something that says, one person that calls it. Whether that's, you know, Randall at the highway department because he knows the roads are crappy, or if it's Heather because she's called Randall and if she's speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, which I guess would be my decision. You know, she works for us, and I would hope that she would call me first, or Ed, you know, or whoever, and say, you know, how do you feel about, there's 10 inches of snow outside and I can pretty much guarantee no one's coming in to pay their tax bill today, can we close? As opposed to, it might sleet, let's close. You know, somebody has to be able to make that kind of decision.
we have to follow what the schools.
No.
My suggestion to this was, and I've done this for 30 years, is I get a letter annually from the superintendent of schools. He would like a call. Not so much that I would make a decision for Southampton. I would make a recommendation, the conditions of the roads in Southampton. He would make decisions based on the roads in Southampton. That's how the schools went. What I recommend to the board here is that Randall, who's out, his job is to check on the driving conditions of the road. Call Heather and say, Heather, I recommend that they can come in at 10 o'clock, but not before, because I can get the roads prepared by 10, or close them down for the whole day.
And so the policy would then need to say, if you're not coming in till 10, and we've called you the night before, yes, we're paying you, or no, we're not paying you. I'm not suggesting that because Hampshire Regional cancels, the building closes, because all of us in Southampton know it's probably sunny out and we don't have school. So that's not what I'm anticipating or proposing at all.
No.
So when I say I'd like to put this off, I mean, I would like us to look at it again and read it and realize that it's probably not a PQB decision to make, it's a Board of Selectmen decision to make.
And it's pretty straightforward, I think.
There was one issue that was brought up about some of the wording in there about posting on social media, and that's something that we can discuss, you know, whether that's an appropriate place to make that decision.
Can I ask a question? I mean, in years past, we always had a tree. We called.
We have a tree.
You're not talking about
No, there is
100 people.
There
You're
is a
talking-
tree, but last year nobody called to say, start the tree.
Why don't we put it on the TV like everybody else?
We can. I just wanted, all I wanted was for, I can just remember watching the snow fall down and Donna saying, it's just me and Vicky here. Can we go home?
And all the other
And I'm like,
offices
I don't know.
around us
Are closed. And so I wanted to eliminate that and just say, you know, so why don't we look at the policy again? Can you please put it in the packet and continue it till December 30th? That's all. I just want someone to start the tree and then for whoever gets paid to get paid, not I'm taking vacation time and I couldn't get there, but I'm getting paid anyway. That's what I want to eliminate.
I would have worked if the building didn't close, so you can pay me anyway.
Right.
The only thing I'm saying is, there's gotta be somebody that has looked at the conditions and talked to Heather.
I
Heather's
think
not
that-
gonna make the decision on that, but somebody should be out there. And the only person I know is out there all the time like that
Randall.
is either Randall or the police officer.
So between Randall and Heather and whoever the chairman of the board is at that moment, need to be involved in that decision. That's it.
I
And
think
then
though,
the
we,
only thing that's resolved is to pay.
And that, we need to resolve the pay, yes.
but if somebody already has pre-approved time off, then they need to take that time off. I mean,
And they don't, just because we close doesn't mean you get to not take your vacation day.
That's in the.
That's in there,
Right,
so.
and that's the way I'm used to it. It makes sense, you know?
Okay, so let's continue that to the 30th, please look at it and let's.
Just one comment on the social media, the benefit of the social media piece isn't so much for the employees, it's for the town residents. So if, Joe Smith wants to come in to get his birth certificate today, and for whatever reason it's a horrible snowstorm, and don't.
And he will
don't
have
rely
looked at
on common
22
sense.
News scrolling at the bottom, so we will continue that conversation.
Yep.
Okay, next, I would like to let Mr. Where are you?
McDonald?
Yeah, but
6.4.
thank you, I wanted to move ahead.
4.2, come on up.
6.42.
Oh,
Okay, I'm just gonna excuse myself for 1 minute and I'll be right back.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Oh, thank you. The reason I'm here is to get a support letter from the select board to apply for a DCR grant to connect Easthampton with Southampton. And the Easthampton part,
we can share, yeah.
This is off at Meadow Street?
yes, that's Meadow Lane. That project is completed now. And we spent something like $8,700 with CPC money, as well as memorial funds. And it is in pretty good shape. I would say it's in excellent shape, and it's one of the few stewardship properties that we have man-made things, bridges, ravine covers, and so on, that is in really good shape. And the intention is for this grant to connect it to a similar size parcel across the river, Beaver Bridge. This is one whole example of fiberglass bridge, excuse me. Connect these two parcels, we'll end up with 70 acres, approximately 1 or 2 miles of many miles?
About 1.5 miles.
1.5 miles. So basically, we're going after a grant. We're looking here for a letter of support. This grant will provide us some connection between these two sites in Easthampton and Southampton. And we have been networking with both the Easthampton Conservation Commission, Postcomic Land Trust, and this town, trying to get this level of support. I think there is a copy of the letter. I will go over the project narrative. This is a letter that we'd like to have signed. And the proposed project will enlarge and enhance the trails on Southampton's Wilmore Conservation Area and connect this trail network to the Postcomic Conservation Trust Trail on Palmer Meadow Conservation Area located in Easthampton. The proposed improvements connect the Easthampton and Southampton trail systems via a new bridge over the Manhattan River, construct a more convenient and accessible 4-car parking lot for trail users in Southampton at the end of Meadow Lane, and extend and improve Southampton's trail. So basically, we have a project to connect the two towns via a bridge, and we're going after 100,000. It needs, and we have to have a very substantial application documentation. It will be due at the beginning of February, and I really have been dependent on Courtney to help us pull all this together as we were when we went after the land grant for the greenery. So we're going to try and apply and to get this grant. We've been told we're very, very attractive by the people who are aware and how these things, because of the two towns and because of the historic nature of the canal and the canal. So basically, I'm looking for that letter to be signed, and there it is.
Is this the letter?
Yeah, the letter to be signed, and we'll add it to a whole bunch of letters from Peter Colcott, Senator Hunnison, the heads of Casperell, and some other political figures.
Is there a town match in this?
I'm sorry?
Is there any kind of match?
The time frame for this is to get the grant paperwork in at the beginning of February. We'll be getting notification at the end of 2015 that we made it or we didn't. If we made it, it's going to require a meeting, because it's again an 80-20. We have to get 20,000 approximately.
Can you do in-kind services?
Yes.
Can you use the in-kind services you already used?
No.
No.
It has to be in-kind services after the date of.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a real good project. It's a step forward.
Has the whole commission talked about it and
Yes.
voted on it?
Yeah.
The whole commission voted on it?
Yes, yes.
And do you know what the cost estimate for it might be?
We have some rough estimates because it's required, and basically the whole thing is going to be about $100,000 divided that way.
Did you get 3 bids?
Huh?
Did you get
Well,
3
we're not
bids?
doing any bids yet.
No.
We have one proposal.
Right.
There's not so many people that do
Yeah,
this kind
right,
of work.
just to give you an idea.
Yeah, but these are the people that were recommended by PVPC,
Mhm.
and they helped do the trail in Easthampton, Palmer Meadows Trail. So
How many people are on your board?
on our board of 7. 7.
7.
Yeah.
And all 7, everybody agreed on this
Yeah.
vote?
So this is only going through if we get the grant, right?
That's right.
But if we get the grant, then we're required to come up with the $20,000.
We have to
Or
apply
match.
via town meeting.
Match
Could be in-kind.
in-kind service. Our labor, their time, stuff like that. It adds
My
up.
time.
You never get paid for that, though.
Going out to bid and all that.
I guess I just have a hard time, and I don't disagree with any of the work that you all do at all. I just have a hard time spending more money on things, although I know what a great service it would be when we're working on other things anyway.
But this is the CPC reserve.
Yeah.
that-
Eligible for CPA funds as open space.
Is it eligible for CPA funds? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what there's no, that's where the money's supposed to be.
And with an 80-20 split, I mean, it's.
Everything's tough.
Well, some of that would be shared for Easthampton. We have two communities here.
Is this a joint application?
Joint application.
Okay.
So when you
it's
say
only-
80-20, we'd have to come up with
It's
10.
only 50-10, really.
Yeah,
And presumably, we would share the Fairfield Bridge, 50% of the bridge is basically theirs, but, again, probably the 20% would come from people working to build the bridge.
But between the two
Bridge,
towns,
yeah.
not, right, okay.
yeah, the DCR
Maybe
grant
survey
is over
work needed.
50,000 for now.
There will be survey work needed?
Yeah, but they can probably get from in-kind services, like Easthampton's got a city engineer that can probably do it. I mean, there's all
They
different.
have a lot of,
I think
it's
they
common
can-
interest.
they can find a match.
That's
They-
a lot.
It's very important that they let them use an in-kind service match, because it's usually pretty good to get that.
So technically, if our highway department worked on it, that would be a survey?
Yep, even their equipment.
Yes,
On Wolf Hill,
yeah,
they, I think the,
parking area.
Ed built the parking area out there.
So I'm
So it's
just,
very similar to the Greenway.
right.
The land grant. The Greenway is a land grant, this is a DCR, smaller amount of money.
So I'm just gonna ask one question. I did speak with someone on the Conservation Commission about this today, who said that there wasn't a vote, that the whole commission was in agreement. So I just wanna make sure that we are covered in that regard.
Well, you had a meeting last night.
Yeah.
Is that when it was voted on?
That was when it was voted on, but we have voted on the overall project over the last year. We have voted on the provider of services over the last year. If it's not 100% of these votes, it's the majority,
Okay.
usually a very substantial.
Okay. I would accept a motion from the board.
So moved.
Yeah, second.
All those in favor?
Right.
Just mine, this is the original, okay.
Charlie, why so long on the,
don't need this one.
just that, they have to,
They get enough
back
votes.
in this year, 2015?
It's awarded at the end of 2015, but it's highly competitive.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, it's surprising it's that far away.
Well, they had 77.
You can have these if you want.
Last year.
Thank you.
They selected 4.
Yeah, was the money appropriated yet from the state? No?
Yeah, the money was
Still
appropriate.
looking where you are to check you off here.
Something.
Okay.
Oh, right there.
We got the letter, okay. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
Charlie,
you.
Thank you.
Is Heather
Thanks.
coming back in here?
She's looking for the materials for the next two. She asked to skip to the warrants.
Okay, so we have you have to read these. You want me to read them and you second, and make a motion?
Sure.
All right, so, I didn't sign them. We have a bill warrant 15-24 in the amount of
We're good.
$380,881.59.
Make a motion, we approve it?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There's a payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $39,607.83. Is
Motion to accept?
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We can sign that? Really?
I have a payroll warrant in the amount of $260,972.39. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. I have payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $38,960.35. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I have a bill warrant, treasury warrant, payroll warrant
pick Rich?
I have a treasury warrant in the amount of $1,050.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, those are
Motion to
done.
adjourn.
I have your missing documents. Apparently they're,
Hey, Liz, you have a motion and a second?
To
What?
adjourn.
Any further discussion? I would say we can't adjourn yet.
Oh, he started.
It's not gonna happen. We're already here, we're gonna finish it, and we're gonna enjoy
that's one
Christmas and
document, and then that's the
Oh.
surplus.
Nice try.
So that's 6.4.3.
6.4.3. All right, this is, we have a PVPC contract extension for the master plan committee. We just need to extend the agreement through December 31st of 2015. Is there any extra money? I didn't get that answer.
Is there anything in the, what was the letter say?
2 signature copies of a contract member. Current contract expires, and due to recent staff changes, will be unable to fully complete the implementation phase of the contract by that date. This extension will allow us to continue to work with the Master Plan Implementation Committee to move forward on the further completion. Please sign. Okay, so I would accept a motion to sign the contract extension for the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This says 2 signatures, but I only see, really? You get this far and now you're gonna leave?
No, where are you going?
Just that, I'm just giving you a hard
You're
time.
gonna kick me out in a second.
Run where you
Thanks for
can.
coming, Mrs. Wallonis.
Thank you for addressing my family.
Merry Christmas.
I'll see you before then.
Oh, yeah?
Merry Christmas then.
All right.
You will laugh. No, it's funny.
All right, so then we have surplus materials. This is to review and sign a release for the sale and destruction of this stuff, which I assume was found or in a closet or not needed or.
Yes.
And now we
Outdated,
don't want to
yes,
throw it
yes.
away.
What
We
is
want-
it?
These are laptops,
Do you mind just reading the
printers.
list real quick?
These are a bunch of PCs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 PCs.
They were in a closet, we didn't know they were there?
Well, a lot of times what happens is we'll buy a new item or something because the old one is now dead or died. And we'll kind of just leave it around because in municipal government, you can't just get rid of it. You actually have to declare it as surplus first, and then you can either have it destroyed or you could sell it if it has any
Right, yeah.
value left to it.
Yeah.
So this is what we have. So there's
Wow.
15 PCs, 3 monitors, 3 printers, 4 keyboards, and a miscellaneous Panasonic telephone. 4 of them.
I'm assuming the monitors are the old CRTs?
The monitors are 2 Dells and a compact.
Are they the flat ones that we can
To give you more description on the monitor.
reuse
It
somewhere?
just gives me a serial number.
We've been using everything that we possibly have to use, and anything that's still good, all our keyboards, all our mice that are still usable are in a different yes pile.
We can make the assumption this is all dead or so old we can't use it?
I would say after the amount of work that's gone into this, yes.
Okay.
So I would,
A lot of those computers are already recycled and rebuilt. I'm
exactly.
telling you.
One thing we gotta be sure, we gotta take the hard drives out of all
I
these.
thought I talked to her about that.
Yeah.
And Ed also made the suggestion if anything has a value of any sorts, as we're surplusing it, it might be something we can do in the spring is do a auction.
Large auction of all, you know, like, there's a lot of bicycles and stuff in the police department.
We do it,
Really?
yeah.
Be surprised there's stuff. You get this-
Bicycles?
What do you think?
It's
Yeah.
stolen and they
It was stolen,
recover
they
it.
People
left
won't come
that-
get them again?
They can't prove, they gotta prove them.
There's just an article on TV saying, keep your serial number of your bike, because if you don't have it, you can't prove it's yours,
There's
you
a
don't.
serial
get it.
number on the bike?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm free.
This sounds like a conversation for another day.
All right, so I would accept a motion to accept this list as surplus material and to sign a release for the sale and destruction of, sale and or destruction of.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Where do you want me to sign?
Just at the bottom.
Sweet child, oh, she can see me.
All that? Where's that, up in the attic?
Oh, it's in the basement. I don't think we have anything in the attic. So one thing before we get into the minutes.
Wait a minute, we didn't do the articles.
That's what I was gonna say. We don't have to get into the articles today, I would just say if you can review some of them before the next meeting, because on the 30th, we're actually gonna have to approve everything, so what I was thinking I would do is, based on what we know we need to put on, verify it with Liz that she thinks it reasonably is likely to continue proceeding forward, and at that point, I'll have it reviewed by council before the 30th. So come the 30th, once you guys sign, it's already reviewed, everything's good, and we're good to go. We have 14 days for a special town meeting to post, so our meeting's on January 20th. It's already, we're all set with the town clerk, we're all set with the moderator, we're all set with the school as far as everything, and we will be all set with Paul, because I'm just giving him notice now. So
how many days we have?
you have to post at least 14 days ahead of time. So if we have our meeting on December 30th, at that point, you guys approve, say, this looks great, let's keep all these articles, let's modify whatever, but it's already been vouched for by council, signed, post, done. Okay.
So continue to the 30th. We have approval of minutes. Do you want to talk about them? Okay. So we're going to continue to the approval of minutes until.
I read them, I mean, I have no problem with approving them.
Okay, so I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from April 29th, June 17th, September 23rd, October 21st, and December 2nd.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our next meeting is December 30th, for all of you at home watching and want something to do on a Tuesday night.
There's nobody at home watching.
Yeah, there is.
It's televised?
Huh?
2-hour meeting.
No, my wife texted me and said it
6:30.
wasn't on TV.
Unless you guys want to do 6.
Really? Is it on a different channel now?
Yeah, it's on
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock on the
Yeah.
30th?
What channel?
It's up to the board.
191?
Yes,
Yeah.
they changed it.
You better get quorum though.
Oh,
'cause
they
right
did.
now
Can you
it's
all
at
meet
12.
at 6 o'clock on the 30th instead of 6:30?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Should we send
2-hour
out a
limit.
reminder?
Yes,
Serve pizza?
2-hour limit,
maybe.
2-hour limit.
Okay,
Happy New Year to
at
you.
this point, we are going to move into executive session for a lot of reasons. We are gonna move into executive session per.
We can actually probably skip 9.1.2. So that will make you happier.
We're going to move into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, per number 2. Do I need to read that?
You should at
To
least say
conduct
that.
strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We're going to move into executive session per number 6 to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. We're going to move into executive session to approve minutes per number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. To approve minutes per number 2, which we've already read. To approve minutes per number 3, which we've already read. And to approve minutes per Mass General Law number 6, to consider the we did that too?
You
Oh,
did
yeah.
6, you didn't do 3. Be 3.
Oh, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares by roll call vote. We will not be coming back into open session by roll call vote.
Seriously.
Moulton, aye.
Oh, yeah.
I'm taking a 2.5 minute break.